That's a thing I probably should do. How's it going, guys? I know that live streams aren't exactly the favorite video of my channel. Most of you probably prefer edited content, but had a few things go down yesterday that cut for time, and I also got this lovely comment that we're going to be responding to today. So I figured might as well go ahead and just deal with that. Normally, I would not dedicate an entire video to a comment response. In fact, the last time that I dedicated the entire video to a single comment was way back when I made a video on Hugh Ross last year, and I made some mistakes in that a viewer saw, pointed out the mistakes that I made, and I went back and re-researched and pointed out the things that I got wrong and the things that they got wrong in their criticism, and did that as a video as a follow-up on that one. Mainly because there were several things in there that I got wrong. This one's a little bit different. So, for backstory, and before I get into backstory, I might as well go ahead and let you guys know we do have two guests on today. One is Inane Dragon, who many of you are probably already familiar with, I would hope.
I swear there will be a new video someday.
Eventually.
I will beat Cosmological to uploading.
Oh god, no, please. Please, no. The cosmological school of YouTubers is not a school that you should do. I love Cosmo, and I don't think that's a good idea. Alright. Oh, and we also have a new subscriber. So, the other person that we have here today who is occupying the middle slot, and therefore getting his name covered up by every notification that pops up, is my friend Dragworker. He's a League of Legends buddy, he's a member on our Discord, and he also is somebody who I spar with constantly philosophically, because both of him enjoy this topic. And we also enjoy being insufferable pedants, apparently.
Absolutely. It's my pastime, and it slowly drives me insane.
Fair enough. Now, that all said, we do have the comment up. And I sent this comment to both of them yesterday. They were not the only ones I sent this to. I also sent it to a few other people, just to make sure that the things that they were saying were about along the lines that I thought they were. How's it going, Dragnaut? You're going to find this this video interesting, I'm sure.
Currently, just for the record, you sent it to me 4 hours ago.
I did send it to you 4 hours ago. Was it only 4 hours ago? Yes, it was, because I asked you if you would want to. If you would want to hop onto the stream. And you said, I don't know, maybe. And then I sent you the thing, and I said, this is what we're doing. And then you proceeded to get alcohol. Which I think is probably the most apt response to reading this comment. But, that said...
It's still too early for me to grab alcohol, unfortunately.
Instead of alcohol, I'll just be drinking this lovely bottle of Texas Pete hot sauce.
Translation, I'm the entertainment tonight. These two will bring you facts and reasonable things to think about. I'll be shit-talking.
Neil asks if there's room for one more. Normally there would be, Neil. Unfortunately, though, we're using Zoom, and as soon as I bring somebody else into here, the formatting on Zoom is going to clusterfuck itself. So, that kind of prevents me from adding more people into the call. But if I end up needing second opinions on things, I might end up just turning everybody's cameras off and bringing people in just because formatting be damned at that point. So we'll see. That said, Neil, we are going to have to fight each other in Yu-Gi-Oh! When we get to a Faithless Forum, so there's that. This is just that look. It's going to be GOAT format, but that look of just disappointment from Inane.
Half disappointment, half irritation. The disappointment is Yu-Gi-Oh! The irritation is I can't go to Faithless Forum this year.
Yeah, I'll be missing out on Faithless Forum too, unless somebody ends up canceling. I'm pretty sure I'm like the first person on the cancellation.
I would hope so. It would kind of suck for you not to be there since, you know, we hang out together on video games all the time. Might as well do it in real life at some point.
I would love to, yeah.
So, for context, 2 weeks ago, I did a video called Evolutionists Say the Darndest Things. I am assuming... So, for context, for that video, I sent that video to Aaron Raw to make sure that I had my bases covered. Because Aaron is one of the most brutally honest people I know. So if I get something wrong, he has in the past corrected me. I sent the video up to him. And he completely said that there was nothing he saw any issue with in the video, how I conducted it whatsoever. This is the same thing that I do whenever I've got a philosophical problem. I will send the video off to somebody like Steve, and I will say, "Hey, do I have my shit together on this?" And if I get a no, then I can either fight with Steve for a few hours or I can figure out what I did wrong. So, there are people who I trust to send videos to before they release or after they release in order to fact check me and make sure that I have not fucked something up. This is one of those videos that I felt like maybe I could have. Maybe I made a mistake. Sent it out. Nothing. There could be a few. And this comment is a review of the first 16 minutes of the video because apparently, according to them, there was enough wrong in the video that they needed to. So, we will go ahead and go with some context. Let me see here. Let me see what happens when I get rid of the thumbnail. Because you guys can see the comment perfectly fine, but my audience cannot. So we go to editor. We float down the thumbnail. Ah! Here we are. Alright. So, it's kind of hard to see. Let me go ahead and zoom out just a tad. Maybe I'll be able to make it to where you guys can see it. Oh no, that made it way worse. We're not doing any of that. Not doing any of that madness.
Technical difficulties were had.
Yeah, basically. Here we are. I've got everything up now. So it's a little cut off here.
It's a little too soon. Yeah.
It's a little cut off, but it does... The beginning comment he says is, 16 minutes in and I can't believe the amount of dumb in this. Just about everything you've said is stupid. So I asked him to demonstrate that. And then he said, well, everything you said was stupid. Would you like me to go through it point by point? It would take all day. To which I said, I will listen. And if I don't respond to your comment, please email me. So, here we are. And now it's time for the fun. Let me go ahead and pull the chat back up so I can see how you guys think about this. I will go ahead and read it off to you guys, and... How about we do this paragraph by paragraph thing? I'll do the first paragraph, and then we'll have Inane do the next one, and then we'll have Drag do the one after that. Obviously, we're going to find issue with things as we go. This is going to be like tackling a freaking biblical gender roles episode, except it's a freaking comment. Are you... Inane, what are you grabbing?
I came prepared.
Yeah, that's probably what you'll need.
You cannot have enough of that, to be honest.
Nah.
It's vanilla porter.
Ooh.
It is delicious.
Not my cup of tea, but...
Well, it can't be a cup of tea. It's vanilla porter.
More for me.
This, sir, is a cup of tea. A 44-ounce cup of tea.
Technically, that is a mug of tea.
Actually, it's technically a thermos of tea, sir.
A thermos is an insulated mug.
And a mug is just a cup with a handle,
Checkmate.
and this has no handle.
Point.
Let us argue semantics and pedantry. Let us do it. Never mind this comment. Instead of the comment, we're just going to argue the etymology of cup and mug.
We're attempting to salvage brain cells.
This is like when I started... Oh, go on, Drag.
I was just going to say, we might be more productive arguing the semantics of a mug.
We might be. So, we'll go ahead and start out. It says, let's start at the start. The term evolutionist simply refers to people that believe that the sophistication and variety of life can be explained by the theory of evolution from simpler forms, by natural/sexual selection, and genetic drift over a long time period. That's kind of a way of saying it. I would have said the changing of allele frequencies.
Yeah, I would have kept it simpler because, after all, there are far more ways to... There are far more selection pressure options than merely quote-unquote natural and sexual. Granted, if we're being honest, natural is such an overarching one that technically all forms of selection are natural, because what even is unnatural except God?
Computer code is unnatural.
No, because that's still show me one part of a computer code that is not present on or in a naturally occurring object. The silicone in your computer all came out of the dirt, dude.
I mean, you're right. But if you have to tell me that your brain is natural, I'm going to argue. And if you have to tell me that my brain is natural, and I think it's probably one of the most unnatural things I have, it's very broken.
No, that just makes it atypical, not unnatural. It is still composed of matter and energy.
So, continuing on, given that a materialistic atheist worldview is dependent on the theory of evolution... Wait a minute. We've hit our first problem, guys. Materialism is not contingent on evolution. It's not. Nor is physicalism, which is a more narrow scope. None of those are contingent on evolution.
Nor is naturalism.
No.
If you want to go to a broader scope.
In fact, science utilizes methodological naturalism, but it only operates under that as a paradigm.
It could, in principle, I don't think it's probable, but it could, in principle, establish something, quote-unquote, supernatural via natural observations and natural methods if that supernatural thing had a meaningful impact on the natural. For example, if your God consistently answered prayers, we might not be able to conclusively say it's God doing it, but we'd at least be able to say there's something going on here that's beyond and outside the laws of physics as we know them.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that is not the case here. Not to mention, depending on your definition of natural, the minute something is observed in any way, shape, or form, or even observed to have an impact, that may take it out of the classification of supernatural into natural.
Yep, magnitude.
Which is the case with how I hold it.
That's the case how I hold it as well. Something supernatural is something that is not demonstrable. The minute that it becomes demonstrable, it is now natural. For me, at least.
I really like the emphasis in this section on atheist worldview, as though becoming an atheist somehow means you have a homogeneous worldview. And for this person, that appears to be a material focus and include evolution. He couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah.
You could be an atheist solipsist for all I care.
You can be an atheist solipsist. You can be an atheist who is 100% a physicalist. Like, exact opposite of an idealist. Mm-hmm. And yet still say that the theory of evolution does not hold. You would be wrong. However, you could hold that worldview, and however inconsistent it is, by simply having that worldview, you are the exception that shows that this rule does not hold in the way that you think. So, let us continue with this madness. It's an alternative worldview to a theistic one, that it's perfectly natural to identify evolutionists. Well, here's the thing. Evolutionist is a term that was coined in the 17th century, from what I understand. The term was then appropriated in the late 19th, early 20th century. And then mid-20th century, we see the term used in a weaponized form by the Creationist movement after its appropriation. This is me taking 2 or 3 hours out of my day to study the etymology of the word evolutionist because I freaking have to, apparently. I could be wrong, but from what I have found, that seems to be consistent. Coinage, 200 years prior to its appropriation, 50 years after its appropriation, used in a more weaponized form.
Also, it's worth pointing out that he immediately contradicts himself in the next sentence. Sorry, drag worker?
Oh, no, that's fine. That's a good point to point out. What I was going to say is where he says like alternative worldview to a theistic one, then it's perfectly natural to identify evolutionists. We already have a term for views that aren't theism, and it's non-theism.
Non-theistic.
Yeah, the worst thing about this is he later admits that theism, you can be a theist and be an evolutionist. And so
it's not an alternative worldview.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So we have 3 errors in one sentence.
And they're not even fallacies. They're just inconsistencies.
They're just errors. They're just wrong.
So, yes, you can have theistic evolutionists, and other theists might find that stance more palatable given the potential for front-loading information, but it does not do away with the fact that evolution is necessary to an opposing atheistic worldview. No, it is not. Because you can hold...
I am now officially a last Thursdayist. I am an atheistic last Thursdayist. Quantum mechanics caused a fluctuation which, as of last Thursday, created the universe, fully formed, with all of us in it, in the midst of motion, and with perfect memories of everything going back to the beginning of memory formation for any given individual. All of that just happened last Thursday. Prove me wrong. Also, God didn't do it. It was just a fluctuation. It was just a quantum fluctuation.
And you can't prove it wrong for the same reasons you can't prove hard solipsism wrong or right.
Which is why last Thursdayism was originally invented. But the point remains that I could hold that consistently as an atheist. I don't need evolution to be an atheist and be logically consistent.
No. Yeah, there's a reason that a lot of the people who care about truth will adopt evolution into their perspective because it's very factual, but that doesn't mean that atheism itself is built upon it.
No, in fact, atheism existed well before the idea of evolution even being proposed in its modern form. Granted, you have early versions like, say, Aristotle's ladder. Aristotle's ladder obviously doesn't hold. For those who aren't aware, Aristotle's ladder was the concept that as beings exist, so the longer that humankind existed, it would refine itself to a point of getting near perfection. Aristotle's ladder was a type of higher movement. So when somebody says the old misnomer, a higher evolved being, this is based on the concept we have called Aristotle's ladder. Aristotle's ladder, however, is not how evolution actually works. Evolution doesn't give a damn about what's better or worse. It just cares about what gets you to the ripe old age of fucking and, having a kid.
And raising that kid to safe maturity, for want of a better term. Or having enough kids that you don't care.
Yeah, which we see in some species. If you have 300 or 400 eggs, it doesn't matter if half of them die. You've propagated your species.
And just so that we can get Godwin's law out of the way, let everyone know that it was a combination of badly understood Mendelian genetics and Aristotle's ladder of being that was what actually propelled Hitler's ideology with regards to race and purity, rather than any kind of an understanding of actual Darwinian evolution.
Yeah, Darwinian evolution and Lamarckian evolution are very different concepts. Something that our good friend Scat Towel doesn't seem to understand when he makes movies. So he has to take a drink for Matt. So, continuing on the paragraph, which we're going to be here forever. Where in the hell was I even?
To vilify.
Yes, to vilify.
To vilify them using the term as a means of othering or promoting divisiveness is disingenuous. No, it's not. In its modern
that's exactly
form,
what they're doing.
In its modern form, that's what it does.
The only reason to do it.
As is the implication you made that it's always the theists going after the atheists. Well, actually, that's not my implication. My implication is that there have been times where science has gone after religion, and there have been times where religion has gone after science. In the modern day, it is very much religion going after science, and, moreover, in the modern day, even though religion has been friend and foe of science throughout the years, most of your modern academia was started by early Catholics, we still find ourselves in a position today where creationism is very much a theistic idea, therefore a religious idea tangentially. Well, all creationism for the most part is monotheistic, so yeah, it's going to be in the label of religion. Because it is religious, we now have the juxtaposition science versus religion. Here, you do not always have it. Sometimes you get someone who is not opposed to science, even though they are religious. In fact, a lot of polytheists have no problem with this. There's no issue with just accepting the natural world as it is in several types of polytheism. And in fact, in several types of Christianity, there is no problem accepting the natural world as it is. Creationism doesn't operate under that paradigm, though.
Right. It's also worth mentioning, like when you talk about the implication that it's always theists going after atheists, that's more or less the general trend that we see with this kind of rhetoric. It's not too often that you see atheists purposely putting themselves against science.
No, there are some atheists who are very anti-science, but generally speaking, they use the same thought processes. There we go. I was trying to say processes. They use the same.
Which one of us is drinking?
I'm drinking tea. Does that count? But a lot of times when you have a very anti-science atheist, the only time that I've seen that function, like without them having some major cognitive dissonance, is by some type of appeal to conspiracy theory. And usually when that happens, when I hear the same thing from creationists, it's the conspiracy theory that science is aligned with Satan and therefore blah, 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 blah. And it's all the same thing. Just insert Satan instead of my government. The face palming is happening very hard over on Inane's end right now.
I'm face palming as well, pretty hard.
So, you said, this clearly isn't true. The atheists dogmatically adhere to a doctrine. Hold on. I'm going to say that again, real quick. The atheists dogmatically adhere to a doctrine. Where?
Tautology.
Yeah, that was also where I kind of thought you were going, was never mind where does this happen. And granted, there are atheists who have their own dogmatic doctrines of various sorts. But you could have just as easily said the atheists dogmatically adhere to a dogma.
But where? What dogma?
Well, Hyperianism for one, the woo goblins of the world.
Fair, but see the thing is though is that I'm okay with the statement atheists can be dogmatic because this is true. I've met a lot of atheists who take, like for instance, the God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and they take it as if it is a secondary Bible, and then start saying that, well, religiosity is obviously a mental illness, because they'll say that, oh, it's a delusion by muddying the waters on the word delusion, and then going down that rabbit hole from there, in which case you say, okay, cool, so when you became an atheist, did you somehow medically cure your mental illness? Because that's not how that works, but apparently that's how some people think that it works.
Yeah, if you can cure your mental illness by changing your opinion on one position, it wasn't a mental illness to begin with.
Yeah. So, I'm 100% okay with him saying the atheists dogmatically adhere, because there are things that some atheists dogmatically adhere to, but a minute that it says the atheists dogmatically adhere to a doctrine, now I have to wonder, which atheist are you talking about? Because you're obviously not talking about me. You're obviously not talking about Drag. You're obviously not talking about an Inane Dragon. And you're obviously not talking about most of the ones who I actually, converse with. So I'm wondering, which atheists are you talking about? And a lot of the atheists that I converse with on a daily basis are some of the people who are influencing atheists across the world a lot. People like Holy Kool-Aid, people like Shannon Q, people like Paulogia. These are people who I talk to. And these people don't adhere to a doctrine either. So again, which atheists are you talking about? If you're talking about a small subset, wonderful. So am I. I'm talking about creationists. The difference here is that I'm not calling all Christians creationists. Now we have...
Yeah, that's really the main difference, because he's broad-stroking it.
Yeah, well, something's being stroked here, definitely. So, let's try to continue with this thing. The atheists adhere to a doctrine of scientific materialism. The fuck is scientific materialism?
A very bad attempt to conjoin scientific methodological naturalism with a materialistic philosophical ontology?
Yeah,
Yes.
that seems really weird to me, because scientific materialism sounds to me like you just wanted to say empiricism.
Yeah,
It
more or
sounds like
less. That's where I thought it was going.
it sounds like he wanted to say that, but he didn't know the word. Either he didn't know the word, or he didn't know that that would be a more apt word here.
I've got myself covered, Callum. I've got myself covered.
You've only got 3. You're not covered. Ocean
I can
says,
lend you half my bottle of whiskey.
Ocean says, not quite. I am curious. He's talking about begging the question, I think, on physicality. Okay, so saying that all questions are physicalists, or all atheists are physicalists, might be closer to what he's saying.
Perhaps the dog. I don't know. We'd have to get more clarification on how Ocean's interpreting it, because I think I know what Ocean's saying, but I don't want to. Since Ocean is interpreting somebody else, I don't want to interpret Ocean's interpretation too much.
Callan brings up a point, though, in the chat.
Yes,
Callan says, why not just say scientism? I'm okay with that, because I think appeals to scientism are problematic as well. Ocean, problem with you coming in to be the same problem with Neil coming in that we have the camera format set up already right now. As soon as I pull you into Zoom, it screws up the entire thing.
He has too much format to add another person.
I need to format my format so I can be formatting my format. Then there will be no format left. Format the format to SAT32 or FAT32.
I think I see where Ocean's coming from, though. More or less, he's talking about, like, it's implied later on in this guy's comment as well that he thinks that atheists are just naturally making the assumption that only physical reality exists. So I think that's more or less
certainly not the case. Like for me, I don't.
It's not the actual case, but that's what his straw man's kind of arguing.
No, his straw man can argue all he wants. You know what the greatest thing about straw men are? Really easy to light on fire. Yes, really easy to light on fire.
They burn quite nice.
So yeah, no. Ocean and Callan both, I think, have the right of it here. The word he probably is looking for is scientism. And yeah, no, I'm okay with him saying that there are atheists that make fallacious appeals to scientism.
Yes,
because there are.
I'm okay with that as well.
There are.
I think scientism is a term that is thrown out by too many, too often, too casually, but that does not mean that there isn't a valid use for it and a valid place for it, including, as Callan is saying in the chat, a fair few of the people who start to harp on her over all kinds of shit.
Yeah, and I've seen it on Twitter where, like, Callan will be interacting with somebody, and the minute that they hear that she's a polytheist, somehow that gets turned into a way to justify undermining any other point she has. And I get just a little mad when I hear that, because I'm like, okay, but you now know that you've opened the door to her just saying, well, you're an atheist, therefore I can ignore at any point you have, right? Like, the minute that somebody's position on God is determines your ability to undermine their points, then okay, cool, they can just do the same to you, and now conversation has stopped.
I mean, let's be honest, though. You're from Georgia. What do you know?
Let's be honest. I'm from Georgia. Being an atheist in Georgia means that the minute I talk to anybody outside, there are things I can't say. You had to
just turn that right around on me.
I can't say things at all when I go outside. Whew. So, to finish their paragraph, clearly isn't true. Since you don't need a god for the universe to exist, there's no rational reason to believe in a god, therefore all theists are rational. Well, no, actually. I can actually undermine this from a polytheistic worldview, or not worldview, but a polytheistic stance, than an atheist stance. You didn't need gods for the universe to come into existence in some polytheistic worldviews, because universe born from chaos is not a deity, therefore, and the deities coming from chaos would mean that even in there, you didn't need the deities to bring about the universe in any way, shape, or form. So, no. There are theistic versions of this that show that that's not always the case. I don't even have to go into atheism to argue that the sentence is bad.
Yeah, this is just clearly an emphasis on creation itself, which is pretty unique to like monotheism, like Christianity.
and especially the assumption and assertion that the only opinion that is valid from a theistic one is the Christian one, whichever Christian one that particular Christian happens to be, since I still contend we need to stop calling Christianity a religion rather than a category of religions.
Well, yeah, considering that Christianity, if I say I'm a Christian and you say I'm a Christian, what was the... You're familiar with Dr. Joshua Digital Hammurabi, correct?
Yes.
There's a way that he went about this. I can't remember how it goes, but the way you could do this with Baptists is you could say, you know, these two people meet and they find out that they're Christians, so they get happy, they shake hands, they say, wonderful. So they continue a walk, and they're walking down a bridge. They walk about 10 feet, and he says, hey, are you a Baptist? And he goes, yes, I am. And they go, sweet, I am too. So they hug, and they continue walking. And then the guy turns around again and says, question, are you a independent Baptist? He says, well, yes, I am. And he goes, awesome, cool. They shake hands, and they start talking about some of their interesting points. We'll go ahead and go into that. And then as they keep walking, the guy turns around and says, Anderson or Hovind? And the guy says, well, actually, I'm more of a Hovind fan, and he gets pushed off the bridge.
To answer the chat, I am drinking Breckenridge Brewery's Vanilla Porter, which is very tasty and very effective at keeping the Abrahamics away.
Also, Cody in the chat has said that your Hunter Avalon video is trash, but no different than all your other videos. That's fine. I know my videos are trash. That's cool. Anywho, continuing. So, it says that theists are continually accused of magical thinking. Saying that it's always the theists that attack the atheists is yet more gaslighting. So you say it's yet more gaslighting, but you haven't shown the first demonstration of gaslighting, so saying yet more makes no sense here.
On top of that, gaslighting is a very specific term about psychological manipulation to undermine somebody's perspective. And these type of debates aren't necessarily a form of gaslighting.
No, it's not. It's simply showing, it's simply me saying, this is what appears to be the case. Especially here in America, it appears to be the case to me that Christianity hits first by saying, hey, we have a separation of church and state. Let's teach the Bible in classrooms. Let's teach creationism in classrooms. Let's teach Noah as a historical figure. And then the atheists push back saying, no, we'd actually like real history and science, please, and thank you.
If you're talking about, especially when you limit the discussion to public policy and law, it's at least in America, I can't speak to other countries, it very much is the Christians realize they're losing a lot of the privileges, and not all Christians, of course, but they realize they're losing the privileges that they have enjoyed for decades, sometimes longer, but particularly post the Cold War when we had to oppose those atheistic communists. And when the atheists go, excuse me, but I think we should probably teach biology in the biology classroom, that's called hitting first somehow.
Yeah, also, speaking of the gaslighting thing, I know that you just answered it in the chat, but I want to say it vocally as well. Jason says, what does gaslighting mean? Gaslighting refers to an attempt to essentially drive somebody insane. It came from a 1940s film called Gaslight, where the husband slowly drove the wife insane by turning on a gas light at the basement, having a friend turn on a gas light in the basement, which, because of the way the gas lights work, it caused all the other lights in the house to dim. When the friend turned that gas light on and off, the husband knew when it was going to happen, and he would deny to the wife that it was actually happening. Every single time that the gas lights would dim, he would say that it's not happening, and it caused the wife to question her own sanity, because whether or not she was actually perceiving reality correctly started to get thrown into question. As a result, she was being gaslit. Now, gaslighting has since been expanded into many different practices that can be used to undermine one's sanity, but it did originally come from that movie. And Pine Snake said it was a stage play a decade before the film came out. That is true as well.
Yeah. I mean, really, how I see it when it comes to the magical bit too. I want to touch on that. I don't see why there's opposition to calling something like that magical. Like, especially in like the creationist view, they literally think God spoke the universe into existence. That's like magical incantation, a spell. You can call it other names, but it falls under a broad category of magic to some extent.
And the only difference between magic and miracle is where the source of the power came from.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't see the issue of taking exception to calling it magical, because it is. I could be corrected on that, I suppose, but I see it that way.
I don't see a distinction between magic and miracle besides where the source is. And even in fantasy, this seems to be the case as well, because in a lot of fantasy, mages pull their power from the Aether of some kind, whereas a cleric would pull their power from a patron deity. So it almost seems to be, even in the realms of fantasy, outside the realms of, if we're talking just theology, the difference just seems to be that magic in a Christian worldview, say, would come from Satan, and miracle, say, would come from Yahweh, but functionally the mechanics behind the two are exactly the same. So
yeah, more D&D shaped my thinking on that too, to some extent. Not going to lie.
At least in the Abrahamic religions, I understand the objection, even if I reject it, because I think that they're ignoring, like Sir has already pointed out, that you're just bitching about the difference in source of magic rather than function. I don't know how it would compare in religions outside of the Abrahamics, but within the Abrahamics, I understand why they're making the complaint, even if I reject the argument.
Samantha in the chat is just saying hockey repeatedly. I feel like there's some Canadian there. I could be wrong. Also, next paragraph is up, and that is Inane's whenever he is done typing to Callan, which I'm assuming is what's happening. Did you need a long drink for that?
Yes.
I ran out of tea, so I'll need a long drink too.
Also, there's nothing wrong with these guys saying that there are some scientists that are daring to admit that there are problems with evolution. As a scientist nowadays, that is a fairly daring thing to admit, particularly if your conclusions lead you down the path of some sort of intelligent design.
That's like saying it's daring. That's like saying it's daring to be a scientist and also say you're a flat earther. I wouldn't use the word daring. I would use the word stupid.
I would maybe let you get away with it if your speciality was, say, the formation of rocks on Jupiter. If that was what you were a scientist of, okay, that's fine. You can decide that intelligent design makes sense in biology, but you're also completely unqualified to speak to that scientifically.
Right. I mean, I see it like, for daring to admit that there are problems with evolution, that's kind of a weird thing to say, because in science, if you find a gap in a knowledge,
that's a good thing.
Want to explore that.
Yeah.
A gap in knowledge and science.
Some mechanism is wrong.
You know,
yes, blue collar heathen. That was supposed to sound that stupid, because you have to have that specialized in education that you're studying something that probably doesn't exist.
Oh.
Or you can be justified in thinking that intelligent design makes reasonable scientific sense.
You know, I didn't even catch that was a burn against people who go to seminary. Jason, you'll catch on in just a second. Don't worry. It's a study of something that doesn't exist.
Although, as Callan did point out, Jupiter likely does have a rocky core.
Ah, yes.
Which one could argue may be a rock.
We are studying the one rock of Jupiter. Continue the madness, my friend.
It might be a little less daring to admit that there are some problems, but oh, don't worry, I'm sure they'll all come out in the wash. As for your counter argument that you make a lot of money by being daring in science, that might be true, but it's certainly hard to make a living by being daring, even though I just contradicted myself by saying it might be true and then saying that
it might be true that you make money by being daring, but it might not be true that you make money by being, oh dear, what did I do?
He's trying to have his cake and eat it too.
He wants all that. He wants all that. He is creating the absolute least falsifiable position he can imagine so that he can argue eternally that he is correct.
Right. And I think the interesting thing here, too, is his little quotation, what he's imposing that evolutionists say is, oh, don't worry, I'm sure they'll all come out in the wash, is baffling to me because that's not a scientific mindset.
No, the scientific mindset is you make a bunch of predictions based on your model, and then you go test those predictions to see if they pan out to be true. And if they pan out to be true, then you've demonstrated the efficacy of your model.
Right, and Darwinian evolution itself has been refined. It's not like we're sticking.
We call it the new synthesis at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like we're just sitting there still reading the Origin of Species and being like everything in this is 100% correct and we don't need to adjust it.
The Origin of Species is the atheist Bible.
I don't even have a physical copy of it. I mean, you want the Red Queen? I got that. You want Why Evolution is True? I got that. But The Origin of Species, I have, like, on Kindle somewhere. It's just not important enough to have a physical reference copy of.
I have something better than those. I have something better than those. These are quite old.
Forget evolution. We're all just Jedi.
But these are
Satan.
Decently old remasters of the original Star Wars trilogy. I find these to be much more important than any of these points.
The real question is do you have a copy that has Han shooting first?
These actually are Han shot first copies.
There you go.
These are what we would call the correct ones. No, these are ones from the very first time that Lucas was trying to make his edits, so these are not so horribly doctored as the current ones. You can still see the green screen flashes in these ones during a lot of the Star Destroyer scenes. So, they're not the best copies, but they are better than some of the other remasters. I don't want to get into a Star Wars discussion, especially without Paul here.
Yeah, that would just be heresy.
It would. It definitely would. That's probably what we're going to or I'm going to bug him about whenever we get to Faithless Forum. Just be like, "So Paul, you and I need to talk about Darth Bane. Let's do that." So, censors the tablets. All right. So,
the sacred text.
Oh, we have some. There's some more stuff in that paragraph, and I think it gets worse as you go.
It does.
Particularly when journals don't publish your material because you're going against the accepted narrative. If that were true, then no journal would have published Einstein's theory of relativity, the early papers on quantum mechanics, anything about string theory. Go down. Darwinian evolution would not. The Origin of Species would not have been published if the journals wouldn't publish things that went against the prevailing narrative. We would have never rejected catastrophism if the Royal Society couldn't deal with the idea that evidence should trump dogma.
The Big Bang Theory would not have been accepted when it was proposed by an archbishop. And it was opposed by an atheist.
Inflationism as an explanation for small deviations within Big Bang Theory would never have been considered acceptable to publish. Go down the list. Just about everything we accept today as good science was at one time scientific heresy. so to speak?
The number one way to not get published in a peer-reviewed journal is to not have good methodology and to not have actual data and evidence supporting what you're saying.
I should bloody well hope so, because I have been helping my buddy revise one of his papers. So I know what goes into getting accepted in peer review.
King Crocoduck actually did a really good video on this topic a couple years ago, where he compared what happens when you take someone like Hugh Ross. Don't get me wrong, Hugh Ross is a smart guy. He really is.
Very smart. He earned his PhD, and he did good work on quasars back in the 80s.
No, but what he did is he took someone like Hugh Ross and he said, let's take Hugh Ross, and let's take how many papers and accreditations he has, or how many people have accredited him and his research for scientific papers. And now let's take another scientist. Same area. Now let's see what they're doing today. Well, Hugh Ross is doing a lot of publishing creation material. This other scientist is working very hard in their field. Accreditations, Hugh Ross has roughly 10% of what other scientists in his field get.
No shit, because he was active in his field for exactly 5 years and then left to organize a ministry and ceased publishing, ceased researching. He stopped being a scientist in practice.
And now is only one in...
And now is only one by virtue of his past works.
Yep. And so this is something that we see a lot when... especially, take somebody like Georgia from AIG.
I was just thinking of that as an example.
So, if we have Georgia from AIG, she has a PhD in biology. That is the field.
Smart woman. I can't argue that point.
Now, what has she actually done with that PhD? Well, she went to go work for Ken Ham and has used that PhD as a baseball bat to combat good science, to combat actual science. Just because they have the PhD does not mean that they are equivalent to somebody who is actively performing work in the field.
And to borrow from the chat from Kimo Maki, the Church of England says that today is Commemoration Day for William of Occam, formulator of Occam's razor. So, be sure to raise a glass.
Actually, it would be simpler if you didn't raise the glass, so cut the glass out.
Yeah. Just pour one out.
The bottle.
But you have to open the bottle. That's another step. Simpler to not.
All right, then raising the glass was simpler method.
Okay, so the ought is you ought drink, therefore.
Premise 1, it's William of Occam's Commemoration Day. Premise 2, you ought to drink in honor of William of Occam his Commemoration Day.
It would have to be formed as an if ought. So if it is William of Occam Commemoration Day, you ought to take a drink.
I mean, if you want to make it more complicated.
Actually, I just simplified it. I took it from a set of premises as well as an if ought statement.
Look, we're not here to be Occam's razor. We're here
to
celebrate Occam's razor.
And what is the best way of celebrating Occam's razor if not by utilizing it?
I would think it would be to create the maximum number of premises for somebody else to then be able to utilize Occam's razor upon. For what is simpler, to cut down the premises or to present more premises for people to cut down?
This reminds me of when I was reviewing Thomas Aquinas' Third Way. That can be broken down to about 33 different premises, and then realizing that it was just the argument from contingency, which can be summed up in 5. Like,
Thomas Aquinas is very long-winded.
He really is.
That was my biggest complaint when I took an ancient and medieval meta-ethics course. Oh, God. It's just Aquinas was so long-winded in comparison to most of the other people we read.
I'm just sitting there like, Tommy boy, you do realize that nobody cared about what you said while you were alive, right? Damn it. Stop.
Argument from popularity.
I know. I'm well
we
aware.
do have to thank Aquinas. He did keep like Aristotelian thought alive and did a good job with that. So,
did I actually finish my paragraph? I thought I had a sentence left.
I think you said it's
Yeah,
perfectly acceptable to use the term daring. Oh no, there is another sentence. Yes, you're right. Do it.
We're sorry, people. I'm sorry that I brought this up. Oh, dear God.
Did you just read the sentence?
I just read the 2 sentences, actually.
Yeah. It's worse.
On
It should
the
be.
other hand, there's plenty of money to be made in safe areas of science, such as the anthropogenic global warming. Do you know how much more fucking money you make if you're willing to sign on as a climate skeptic and get your check cut by the Koch brothers? Do you know how much fucking money you can make? Do you know how much fucking money I could make if I wanted to go on a tour and say, climate science is wrong, bitches? Y'all should put them coal burners onto your truck and roll oil on them people in them hybrids. If I went out and said that shit, even with the paltry credentials that I happen to have, I'd make bank. There's this small thing called hedonistic ethics that stops me. And if the pursuit of pleasure stops me from taking that paycheck, you know how corrupt that paycheck is.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I'm more or less in agreement with that. When it comes down to like anthropogenic global warming, like when it comes to studying global warming or climate change, as it's been more recently called for good reason, you get your funding oftentimes if you're a federal program that studies climate change, you get your funding cut or in jeopardy of being cut consistently.
You have one more sentence to get through, Inane. You can do it.
I just noticed that it's technically still 2. I miscounted because one of the sentences is so tiny, but that's okay. That one I can power through. Or even the sexist glacier field. So yes, it's perfectly acceptable to use the term daring.
The sexist glacier field.
It's a reference to a paper that was published on feminist glaciology back in 2016. So you know this was big with all the SJW and anti-SJW channels.
About to say this sounds like something that the intellectual dark web would have eaten and just like enjoyed.
Oh, it was popular.
Yeah,
it was popular to shit on it. And I'll admit, if you only read the abstract, which most people did, it sounded absolutely horrible. In fact, I know many a feminist and self-declared SJW who went, oh my God, this makes us all look bad. Because this was a case of somebody finding a paper to write in their critical studies journal so that they could get their PhD. It's the kind of pap that gets produced when the requirements to get a PhD is that you produce an innovative paper that's genuinely new and transcends the existing works. Impositions we don't put on a researcher with 20 years in the field. We put on new PhD graduates. And so they find something to write about, and most people go, why? Why?
Also, I really just want to point out that he's talking about this somehow being lucrative or a safe area of science when this is actually something that's very critiqued, and it's definitely not a safe area. Or let alone the fact that there's lots of jokes about how little you make in gender studies fields. So,
yeah, most people who go in to study almost any liberal art, but gender studies is definitely one of them. People who go in and study those fields suffer from 2 things. One, they're not you don't have a lot of highly sought after jobs that you can get into when you go into those fields. And 2, there are people who, what's the term for it? People who think that the STEM fields are the only fields worth studying. I can't remember what the term is for them.
Assholes.
Yes, asshole is a term I would use.
As a STEM graduate, the official term for people who say the only thing worth studying is STEM is an asshole. Just putting it out there. I think I'm the most qualified to speak on that in this group, to my limited knowledge.
Because you are, in fact, an asshole?
Because I am an asshole, and I have a STEM degree.
Fair.
I come at it from both directions.
Giggity?
Every time.
Depending on how you spell come. Also, we do have... because we have... this is going to be interesting. This is going to be very interesting. I need to figure out how I'm going to put this in. I'm sticking to my rule that if a fan art gets submitted during the course of an episode, it has to go up. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to manage that.
Just plop it over.
Goodbye, chat. Yeah, or me. I'm just a ball of text.
He's just a name. So. He's a placeholder.
See, you say that.
Look at this. Look at this. What is that?
A mistake? Aha! I know what I can do. Boom.
It's fitting. Put that over me.
No, I can't do that. Okay, yeah. I'll just put it over you. It's from a username. It's from a user whose name is Be Gay Do Crime, and I don't agree with one of those.
By the way, chat, I'm going to be posting the link to that glacial studies thing if you want to read it, by the by.
Oh, you found the link already?
It's super easy.
Oh, I know it is. I've had to pull it up for friends and whatnot before, too, when it's gotten discussed because they found something like the Ralph Retort article on it from 2016, and they went, holy shit, this thing was real, and I went, holy shit, you're reading the Ralph Retort?
I also posted it, Cirrus, in the Zoom group chat too for you. So
okay, awesome. Then I'll have to get that in the description whenever we are done with the video. That way people can know that it's there for reference. That said, I believe that you have our next paragraph drag.
All right, well, moving on to the quotes out of context section. Firstly, the example you use of someone quoting Darwin is only out of context if you're trying to argue that Darwin didn't believe in evolution. And here's why. Insert quote here in brackets. That's what's right there on his comment.
Instead of going for the quote, which, by the way, the actual quote from Darwin, the entire thing for that quote is in my description. I have a link to all the quotes that I dealt with in the description of that video from a website that compiles quote mines. He could have easily gone in there and copy-pasted. It took 2 seconds of his time.
Oh yeah,
I did that work for him already. Are you okay, Inane?
Oh, I'm pulling up. I'm trying to pull up the Darwin quote.
It's the Darwin quote on the I.
Seriously, he didn't understand why that was taking that quote the fuck out of context.
So
even creationists know why you shouldn't use that one anymore.
So here's the thing. When I started that video, I began by saying, here is a demonstration of how to quote mine so that you understand what they're going to do. They did not use the Darwin quote. I brought up the Darwin quote saying, this is how it is commonly misrepresented. Here is the full context for the quote so that you can understand the problem with quote mining. Let us continue. In this paragraph, he calls that demonstration poisoning the well.
Oh, that's what he was referring to for poisoning the well. Okay.
Yes, that is what he was referring to for poisoning the well.
That has been so quote mined so often by Ken Ham, both Hovens, their genetically fucked up offspring, what's his face?
Discount Hoven?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, Josiah Hansen.
Yes. The child of Kenton Eric Hoven, as I prefer to think of him.
You also forgot that Ken Ham is also in the mix there.
I thought that was the first guy I mentioned. Ken Ham, both of the Hovens, and the offspring of both of the Hovens.
The offspring of the Hovens, though, is also the offspring of Ken Ham. He's got Ken Ham like fanboy material everywhere.
It checks out.
Also, Quessa.
It's the Bible Belt. You can easily have three fathers.
He's in Japan. He's not even in the Americas.
Anymore. He swallowed the dankest red pill.
Jefferson's church.
Hold on, we have a super chat. We have a super chat from Quessa. another $1.70 to celebrate the black hole picks, and
that was so fucking awesome.
They also had a super chat earlier. Oh yeah, I did see the pictures of the black hole. They also had another super chat earlier. Georgia Purdom is a frightening. How can anyone play dead to get a PhD solely for the purpose of using it as a weapon to screw over science? I don't know. Ask Georgia.
Yeah, ask about. I would say to try and be as charitable as I can. Ask about 50% of quote unquote practicing creation or intelligent design scientists.
I will go ahead and say that if you call yourself an intelligent design scientist, you started out by lying to me.
The reason I have to say the reason I have to put the threshold a little lower than 100% and even so low as 50% is I know of scientists who started out even as geniuses, and usually in fields that were not directly biological. Like the most famous one, although I can't remember his name, he gets brought up in I believe a Dawkins book. He was a very promising up and coming geologist, and as he learned more and more about what geology taught, he got more and more frustrated because of how it was contradictory to what he was taught about the Bible. And ultimately he had to decide, based on his religious upbringing, that he had to throw out his entire life's work in geology to be a good Christian.
That's not the only example of that. If you look at the strides in mathematics that Pascal made before the advent of his wager,
before he went insane, which was before he went insane and then he came up with his wager. Little brought up point.
Yeah. But Pascal, before going into his hyper-religious phase where he made Pascal's wager, actually was a brilliant mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
He made a lot of strides in mathematics that we benefit from.
We owe a lot. We owe a lot to Pascal.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely.
So there, and that's probably one, instead of going into a geologist who a lot of people who haven't read, because I know I believe it is in God Delusion when Dawkins mentions that. Instead of going into the unnamed guy that we don't recognize, almost everybody who consumes this content recognizes Pascal's wager. They know that this is a thing. When you bring up Pascal's wager, people immediately understand what you're talking about.
The reason I didn't go to Pascal for this, though, is because at the time Pascal was writing and working, you didn't have the young Earth creationist versus evolution debate, as there was kind of a couple of centuries gap there, if I remember my numbers correctly.
Yes, because the young Earth creationist evolutionist debate didn't begin until 1940s and 50s. Well, that too, but the movement that actively fights against it is spawned from 20th century.
That's definitely where it got its strongest boost, but I would recommend you and anybody else who has spare time check out a book called The Dragon Seekers by Christopher McGowan. Sorry, I had to lean a little off screen to see my copy of the book. It talks about the earliest paleontologists, and they didn't even have that name for themselves yet, in England, and about the rise of these theories in biology, in paleontology, in geology, and the overthrow of earlier theories, such as how everybody talks about how uniformity is an assumption in science, but if you actually go back, it's not. Uniformitarianism is actually a scientific theory
that was developed juxtaposed to
catastrophism, whereby the laws of physics change radically after each godly catastrophe that reshape the world and its environs.
Which is where we get things like, oh, well, the laws of physics didn't need to apply before the fall. The laws of physics didn't need to apply
and
before Noah's flood.
Contrary to the young Earth creationists, uniformitarianism is not an assumption on our part. It's a tested and validated scientific theory, and this book goes into how they validated it. Because when you think about it lazily, you go, oh yeah, if you look back in history, I guess you couldn't tell that the laws of physics used to be different. But then this actually explains exactly why you would expect to see differences in the evidence if the laws of physics ever changed.
Yeah,
and this was something they worked out in the 17 and 1800s.
There's a great bit in King Crocoduck's Bill Nye Ken Ham debate where he gives the breakdown on the absurdity of like Ken Ham saying that radio decay rates had to be different, and like goes like it's a slammer. I can't do it justice summarizing it, but basically it shows like the absurdity of like, well, okay, so if you're going to claim that physics operated differently, these are the effects we would expect to see.
The knock-on effects of changing the rate of decay of a molecule of an atom is that you would change fundamental concepts such as the speed of light, the mass of a proton, the mass of an electron, the mass of a neutron. You would have literally prevented physics from working in any way, shape, or form if you fucked with something as simple as the rate of decay of a single atom.
Right.
You just can't do it. You cannot do it and maintain a consistently existing universe. Unless you accept the theory that magic did it. And that has no explanatory power on its own. You have to provide a better framework than that.
Yeah, what it does is it explains it away. And explaining away is not explaining something. This is why when I've had friends that loosely use the term explaining away for things sometimes, and they mean explaining, and I'd literally just go, look, I understand that you meant explain, but please also understand that to me, explain away means to dismiss. It doesn't mean to actually, like, substantially do anything. So, Drag, would you like to continue this paragraph? We are going to be here for a while.
That's fine with me. I've got plenty to drink.
It's only been, despite how long it's felt, it's only been an hour and 15 minutes.
Despite how long it's been, we're on paragraph 3 of about 15.
Since no one does that, it's perfectly reasonable to quote him in the context of saying, even Darwin thought that the eye coming about by natural selection seemed absurd.
No, because that's no longer the context.
That is to say, it's a natural reaction to the suggestion. Also, what you were doing by bringing up that whole story was poisoning the well. Not good.
It's not poisoning the well.
Nope, I'm out.
Look, I understand. Trust me.
Take another shot and we'll keep going.
I've got some low-dose aspirin here as well. Believe me, we can both do it at the same time if you need to, but you gotta survive.
Sadly, that wouldn't have worked anyways.
I would need to use Tylenol.
I mean, what I want to say on this part is this is something that I've never really made this view public of mine, but it's one that I hold. And it's, I don't give a damn about what someone personally finds absurd. It's what data would suggest and lead you to.
Right.
And so when he says that it's like it's a natural reaction to the suggestion, yeah, it is. And there's lots of ways that our natural reactions would lead us to incorrect assumptions or perspectives. Our sense of absurdity is by no way a metric of truth.
Speaking of things that are irrelevant metrics, so I went ahead for giggles and just looked up the disambiguation on poisoning the well just to be certain that my hunch was correct. And what I did was not even poisoning the well. Because poisoning the well is an informal logical fallacy where irrelevant adverse information about a target is preemptively presented to an audience. First of all, considering that what I was talking about was exactly what they were talking about, it's not irrelevant. And two, I'm talking about their ideas, not them. So if my target is their ideas, and their ideas are quote mining, and I give it an example of quote mining, it is not poisoning the well. Improper use of the fallacy, I'm going to go ahead and call fallacy on him. Because why not?
There you go. He's not even wrong.
Because I can do that. Yeah, he's not even wrong. I can do that here. I can do that. Magic Made Easy said more funding for evil atheist globe head agenda. Oh my god, should I say that? Should I say that in an Alex Jones voice? Should I do that in the Alex Jones voice?
Oh, please do.
Because I feel like, Inane, are you gonna have to drink if I do that? That laugh was not a yes or a no. I'm terrified. I may make Inane suffer from alcohol poisoning at the end of this.
Let me put it to you this way: we are so far down the rabbit hole that I downloaded my copy of On the Origin of Species so that I could present to people what the difference between quote mining and quotation in context is.
All right, Magic Made Easy, you did this. You did this to us. More funding for the atheist globehead agenda. There. You okay? Are you okay, Inane?
I'm just gonna spray lens cleaner in my mouth now.
Turning the freaking Christians gay. Okay, Quessa says also, oh yeah, let's fund the evil atheists. My date stiffed me, so let the atheists destroy this world. Oh dear. That's a mood. Oh great, I get the long paragraph apparently. Oh, this is wonderful.
If you need to tag out, just let me know.
Magic Made Easy. Can we get the chat to pay Cirrus enough to do the entire video in the Alex Jones voice? Oh dear.
Can we set a goal bar for that?
If we do that as a... Oh god, no. I know that if I say anything, then I'll just immediately get somebody going, you're being a shill. This is where my PayPal just gets like a quick like $200 donation, and they're just like, this is just to ease the deal. It's like, no, please stop.
Okay, to save
this is where Oz comes in.
To save everybody from me having to read Darwin's dated English, the very short form is he presents this idea, this hypothetical argument of, wow, it's really crazy. How the fuck did something like an eye come about by natural selection? That I can't comprehend. And that's the part they quote. And he's claiming, the guy the guy we're reacting to, is claiming that the only context you need for that quote is that Darwin was an evolutionist. Except that the actual fucking context of the fucking quote, people, is that he was saying, hey, there are some objections people might have to my theory of natural selection. For example, how the fuck did the eye come about? That seems really improbable within the context of natural selection. And examples. Now let me explain to you why this is bullshit. He was presenting his opponent's argument. He was not expressing his own fucking opinion. So yes, it's quote mining to present that as if it were his opinion. Don't do it.
Tell us how you really feel.
Fuck this guy. In the butt with an empty bottle of vanilla porter.
So I do
drink more vanilla porter.
I do want to point something out. This is what we've gone into, just deconstructing 3 paragraphs so far. Now, recently, I've had a tirade of Hunter Avalon fans commenting on the video that I did about him and saying all kinds of things. One of my favorite ones is saying, why did I need a 20-minute video to explain the things that Hunter said wrong in 6 minutes? Usually, if somebody says enough wrong things in 6 minutes, it's going to take me more than the amount of time that their video lasted to unpack it. So the fact that it took me 14 minutes of time, maybe 12 if you consider like my opening and stuff where I didn't have points, if you consider that, the fact that it took me only double the amount of time to deconstruct his bad points, like, that's actually a fairly good record. But
this is why even time debates are usually more in favor of the person who has easier rhetoric and not the person who has the actual facts.
Time debates are also usually in favor of the person who has the affirmative position, because unpacking the affirmative position usually takes more time than stating the affirmative position.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's always easier.
Somebody mentioned Hunter Avalon?
He's Is it what you need?
It's what you do.
So, Cyrus, shall we dig into the next paragraph?
Ah, yes. By the way, do either of you watch The Right Opinion?
Nope.
I do not.
He does deconstruction of other YouTube channels of like their history and where like potentially they made mistakes and stuff like that. If you are going to be a YouTuber, he's a good commentary channel to watch because his commentary is on other YouTubers. This is the part where he would just say, "Let's dig into the spice."
What was the name of his channel again? I'd love to check it out.
It is The Right Opinion.
The Right Opinion. Okay.
He's a very good commentary channel, and he's usually fairly unbiased as well. So, going through his channel, you're not going to find like a whole lot of right or left rhetoric. You're going to find just like, here's the brunt facts, here's what happened, here's my perception of that. Let's go on. One apologist says, "Go look at my art, you slut."
I just like the very true fact that Queesaw put out. Oh, good golly, they're never gonna finish the text at this pace.
Let's see. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna take a bit.
Yep. Also, apparently, Rule 63 has struck again, guys.
I like the shaved head, Wumbo. Good job.
Yeah.
It's a great hairstyle.
Let me go ahead and try to get that in here. So apparently, my avatar is now taking... The Rule 63 version of my avatar is now taking fashion lessons from Raz. So there we are. Because apparently the Rule 63 version of my avatar is canon to the lore of my channel. I don't quite understand it. I just know I have to accept it. Just like how if you go into the NSFW section of my Discord, apparently Logic's tentacles are now canon to the artistic lore of my channel. For reasons. Thank you for throwing that up in Twitter, Drag.
I don't look like a human in my avatar. Since after all, they're going after your avatar, not you.
Yeah, I know.
This Logic retweeted it and liked it, so he's on board.
Yeah, I'm well aware. I'm aware. Whew. You know, that's one of those things where like you realize that when you do a collaboration with somebody, some parts of their universe are going to like spill into yours a little bit. Like how I've done a collaboration with Zod, Telltale, Mr. Atheist, and Logic, so there was a recent fan art put up that showed all of us together in one panel. And I was like, that's really cool. And then I saw how short my character was compared to them. I also saw that the version of the version that they used for Telltale was just a pen. Because Telltale does not have an avatar or a talking head. He is just a pen.
He just draws.
Bumblin' Bee says the April Fool's Day vid just cemented the canon of it. Bumblin' Bee's the one who made the Femme avatar for the April Fool's Day video. Because when you get enough comments that you can put them to the musical beats of Undertale soundtrack stuff, you know that it's become lore. Okay. Let us get into the next paragraph. Finally. As for the first quote they made, they are concluding that the guy that they're quoting is at a basic level saying that evolution is a religion. Okay, so the first quote that they used was one where someone was saying that evolution could be used as a religion substitute. Which is not what they said in the quote. It says, that is, it serves in part to fulfill the role of a religion. And no, you're not your straw man of simply a pursuit of supreme importance. Okay. If I went back into that video, I could show you the part where I said the only way that you could construe evolution as a religion is by using the murkiest definition of religion, which is a pursuit of supreme importance. Where if I viewed supreme importance as, say, folding my socks. I viewed that as something of supreme importance. Then folding my socks would now be a religion, based on this murky definition. And because it is so imprecise, it is a useless definition that ought not be utilized.
Oh, he gets into that later on in this paragraph.
Oh, I know. Because by claiming that I strawmanned, he then constructs a strawman, which is what we call projection. So, let us see here. That's not what religions are. Religions are metaphysical theories on the nature and cause of existence in life, the consequences of such a cause, as well as what the best way to comport oneself in the light of that cause, which we call morals or ethics. No.
And this right here, hold up though. This right here, to me, is perfect because he clearly defines what he means by religion. And earlier he says that evolution is a religion. Evolution is not a metaphysical theory on nature.
No.
It's not and it's...
And it says nothing about morals or ethics.
Yeah, it does not meet his own definition of religion that he provides. Utter failure.
He contradicts
Utter
himself.
failure.
Now, if you want to use evolutionary theory as a part of a materialistic worldview that describes an undirected universe and emergence of life, how could you use evolutionary theory to describe the emergence of life as categorically that is not what evolution covers?
Cyrus?
Yeah, that's what abiogenesis
by
is.
not understanding what evolution is.
Yeah.
If you don't understand what the fuck you are talking about, then you can make the argument he is making.
There's a thing I want to say, but it would get my entire channel demonetized. I ought not say it.
Just post it in the chat.
You know what? I'll send it to you on Twitter, Drag, but I am not going to actually vocalize it because
that's fine.
You know,
I'll promise not to vocalize.
Have I accurately summarized the intent?
There we are. You know what, Inane? I'll send it to you as well.
And then I'll say it.
No, you won't. I won't. I would actively hope you don't. But I will gladly watch your reaction.
The last thing I have is zoom.us/
should be on Discord.
Character. Oh, on... God, making me remember I have a Discord.
Your wife is in my Discord more often than you are.
She's very active on Discord. She should actually get her voice out there in the community publicly.
We've tried that. That didn't work out very well.
No, it doesn't. Never does. Everybody keeps telling her to, and then she never listens.
Magic Made Easy says, just a thought, if we get Cyrus to beat curses enough, we can get audio samples to play Daft Punk.
There we go.
You know, I honestly think that that wouldn't get you demonetized, just saying.
The thing
seems pretty cool.
The thing that you sent on Discord.
Yeah,
You've sufficiently distanced it from the point now.
Yeah, well, I'm still not going to say it.
Also, nobody ever said that eugenics was a bad thing.
But it is.
Technically, it's only a bad thing if you apply it to other people. If you apply it to yourself, no one can argue with it.
Now, yay! Let's walk down them dark roads.
All I was suggesting was not having kids. God, why do you have to go to the dark places, Cyrus?
But don't you understand? For evangelicals, not having kids means the end of the American way. The entire nuclear family is destroyed.
Ironically, it nuclearly blows up.
Wombologist says, Cyrus, can Rule 63 Cyrus be a lesbian? She's cute and I've made her too powerful. You know, it's probably a good idea to make it that way, only because it would stop the stem of Cyrus on Cyrus fan art.
It won't stop it. It'll just give it a rapey vibe that you really don't want.
Oh my god. Like...
Tell me I'm wrong.
Dang it.
Sorry, Cyrus. I wish you were right on this, but let's get back to the comment. It's less rapey.
It is. I at least consented to read it. Throw in some faith. Oh, let's see here. No, that's a little too far. Now, if you want to use evolutionist theory, materialistic worldview, blah, 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 blah. Where was... Yeah, actually, I was there. In accordance to natural law, and somehow want to include morals and ethics, and it started to take the shape of religion. Throw in some faith to cover the holes, some dogma to recite, such as the theory of evolution itself. What?
The theory of evolution is not dogma. Say it with me, chat. Press F for this person's honesty and to say it with me. The theory of evolution is not dogma.
But if I said it with you, that'd be dogma.
Shut up.
That's
with
the
your facts.
joke. Facts don't care about your feelings, Drag.
That's like more
Facts.
Jordan Peterson than Ben Shapiro.
Facts don't care, period, because it's a category error to associate feelings with an abstract concept of the relationship between a statement and the objectively observable world.
So you're saying facts are not agents?
Facts are not agents and therefore are incapable of caring.
But are facts secret agents?
Facts don't care about your feelings. Okay, folks?
Dang it.
Drink more beer.
So, the author wasn't being oh no, dang it, I am losing my place everywhere. And some attacks on other religions, i.e. theists, and it's practically indistinguishable from any other religion in form. The author was being misquoted here. He was basically saying that it fulfills the same role of religion in his and many other people's lives. Since it's an unproven, and don't bang on about math, it's being used in the colloquial sense theory, it fulfills the same roles as a religion. Okay,
I have to rewind a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we go back to some attacks on other religions, i.e. theists, theists is not a religion.
Theists actually categorically is separate from religion. Completely.
Yep.
Your belief or disbelief or belief not of a deity has nothing to do with religion.
You could arguably believe in a god without practicing a religion.
And you can practice a religion that has no god.
Yeah, you can have a religion that has no god. You can have a belief in a theistic god without being a practitioner of a religion worshiping that god. And furthermore, theism, even if you wanted to think of them being parallel to religion, theism would be a category within which many religions exist, i.e. theistic religions. Religions that have gods. It is not itself a religion. So what the fuck?
It ain't just quoted on a freaking Twitter. Watch Cyrus drive me to drinking. It begins. It continues. So, people have faith in it. It has supposed implications for ethics and morals. You just call it basically a religion. Not a misquote. Oh, and my favorite part. And on that anime waifu Yu-Gi-Oh cards and sock folding bullshit, that was a reductio ad absurdum fallacy. All of those things actually could be considered religions.
Also, he does know that reductio ad absurdum is not just a fallacy, it's also actually a technically correct method of argumentation. The reductio ad absurdum is when you apply the methodology as a fallacy, is when you apply it when it does not apply.
Yeah, it's just an appeal to extremes, is all it is. And the thing is though, an appeal to extremes can be used to showcase the fallacious nature of a point.
Correct.
It is not in and of itself a fallacy.
It becomes fallacious when the extreme is not entailed in the original point. If the point entails the extreme position, then the reducto is not a fallacy.
And by using the reducto here, by saying that the religion is anything that can be prescribed extreme importance, then it would logically follow that anything categorically could be that.
Their definition of a religion. You applied it consistently to things that were absurd to call religions, demonstrating that the definition, therefore, Basically, a reductio ad absurdum is a great argument against bad definitions. It's an argument to use in semantics.
You could also,
the thing is,
also
here,
a counter
he
to
bites
the
the bullet.
He bites the bullet right afterwards and says that those things could be considered religions. Now, I understand 112% that anime waifus can be considered a religions. Religions could be considered a religion. I know what a daikimora is. So
fair. But he does. He immediately bites the bullet. He says that your fallacy doesn't apply, but then he's like, well, actually, if they do hold it as supreme importance, I guess it is a religion. And it's just kind of like, okay, so it's not fallacious. It is correctly applied. The problem is you just don't currently see these people as taking it to a religious extreme. That's the only issue he takes with it.
He says that it's because no one does that, it's a fallacy. Well, no one does that because it would be stupid to do so. It doesn't make it fallacious. Because when we're talking about hypotheticals, whether or not people do things is not part of the argument. What is part of the argument?
Exactly.
What is part of the argument isn't that people do things. What's part of the argument is that the people in the hypothetical must do these things, demonstrating the argument's bad. And Sci-Fi Mind says, if Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a religion, is Jaden Yuki Satan? And yes, Jaden would be Satan, and Yu-Gi-Oh! GX would be hell.
Game on. You gotta get your game on.
No! Stop! Bad. Inane, are you okay? Are you making your dragon listen to everything instead?
It's my cousin who has to listen from now on. He'll suffer for me. Why my cousin? I forget what we named you.
I mean, honestly, a lot of that paragraph can just be summed up as like, he's not even wrong, because it's such a bad understanding of it. Like, throw in some faith to cover the holes. Where is science using faith to cover the holes in evolution?
He's trying to claim that every time we say, okay, we don't know the answer yet, but maybe we'll figure it out, he's claiming that that is an act of faith. Which is bullshit, obviously.
And then, dogma to recite, such as the theory itself. So the theory is comprised of facts. So facts are now dogma.
The theory is a
technically,
model.
The theory is a model which explains the facts. It is an abductive model, so yes, it could be wrong, because we are arguing from the facts that we know to the best explanation of those facts. But there is a fact of evolution, i.e., allele frequency changes over time, that is generations. And then there is the theory that explains why and how that happens.
Right.
And I will give credit to anybody who says, hey, the theory and the facts are two technically separate things. But the theory exists because of the facts.
The model comports itself to the facts.
Yes, and we will change it if we find facts that make it necessary to change it.
So, if you are sober enough, Inane, you do have the next paragraph.
Is it the one about the tirade?
Yes.
Yep.
Then you go off on a tirade about how it's all theists' fault that atheists claim that theism is anti-scientific and irrational, and that we should all immediately ban religion.
Except that's not a thing I ever said in that video ever.
Let's even take it. So the most extremely anti-theistic anti-theists I know of, from the very polite but still anti-theistic Godless Cranium and Shannon Q, all the way over to the burn atheists who don't agree with me enough, Nightmare Fuel, none of them want to ban religion.
And Nightmare Fuel is probably... And Nightmare Fuel is probably one of the hardest anti-theists that I've ever come across, and he still does not want to do that.
Nightmare Fuel thinks that Godless Cranium and I aren't anti-theistic enough, and he doesn't want to do that. So, who wants to do that again? Who? Whom? Whomst?
I can tell you. I can tell you, it's a nice little person made out of a hay-like material.
Now, granted, there are some atheists who do think that religion should be banned. That's a thing that
Yes.
probably should be pointed out. There are some people who hold the extreme position like that. So
I will readily grant that, as with every extreme straw man, you can find somebody who fits it. There is indeed a Richard Spencer for atheists. He does exist somewhere. In his mother's basement, I'm almost certain. Probably because he ate his mother for sustenance.
He didn't eat his mother. He ate one of his many thousands of fedoras. He just sits there like on the internet nibbling on fedoras.
Yes, Crypto Nightmare Fuel is also pretty anti-SJW. Oh yeah, Stefan Molyneux has like a fucking love boner for Christians. He thinks they're the only savior we have from those evil, evil liberals.
Yeah, Molyneux will appeal to the religious right as the answer to the leftist problem. So, yeah, I mean, technically, I guess that statement isn't incorrect. The religious right would be an opposition to most of the left, yes. But where you go after that is beyond me.
Okay,
I see. It's just a never-ending struggle, because once you give the religious right back the hegemonic power, then you have to have the left come back.
So wait, it's all jihad. It's all jihad then.
All jihad all the time!
Because that was a very German... That was...
Who do you think invented any of this?
So what you're saying is, me bringing you onto the stream is a form of schadenfreude?
Yes. You wanted to see what would happen if you gave into your inner cravings and became an alcoholic over horrible Christian takes.
This is just a Christian hot take. So, continue, please. Let the suffering commence.
Oh, clear drivel! Yes, everything you said in the preceding 4 paragraphs was drivel. The war between religion and science is due to the atheists trying to use science as a justification for eliminating religion.
Where?
There is no inherent dispute between the two, but science has been used as a weapon against religion for over a couple hundred years now.
Only if you give in to heavy-handed conspiracy thinking.
There's a reason, even if that was true, there's a reason for it. The religions that it's opposed to diametrically are ones that are making specific claims about existence that are factually wrong.
Sci-fi mind, now he sounds like Napoleon.
Do we have any recordings of Napoleon to actually know what Napoleon sounded like? I'm pretty sure he died before audio recording happened.
I'm pretty sure that all of us just think of a general, like, short, rabid Frenchman, even though he was of average height.
True.
Like, I think Napoleon, he was 5'5", wasn't he, or 5'7"?
I don't know.
Yeah, Cal and I agree there is no war between the two, but there are certain religious like interpretations like young earth creationism that are just factually false if you are factoring in science.
Conflict theory is the direct result of an early of the founder of, I forget whether it was Harvard, Cornell, or one of the big Northeast universities, where he was looking at he was looking at the religion of his time and his place. It was a very parochial attitude that he adopted. He saw how the religious fathers in his community reacted to science, and he applied that in an overly broad way to all religion across time, and he cherry-picked out examples, some of which we have since disproven, but examples that were accepted as common knowledge and common history at the time, and said, look at this! Look at all of these examples of how evil religion, and to be more honest, in his case, all of his examples were Christian, so it wasn't even a fair assessment of religion versus science, but rather Christianity as he saw it versus science. So I get where he was coming from, especially once you understand he was looking at it parochially. but it's a very narrow view, and it's a dishonest view when you attempt to apply it at large.
Which is why in the video itself, I specifically say that religion and science have been both friend and foe throughout history. It just depends on which side of history you're on at the time. There are times where religion is the biggest proprietor for science and the biggest funder for science, and then there are times where religion is the biggest opposer for science. But it all comes down to what region you're in, it comes down to what religion we're talking about, and if we're talking about Christianity, it comes down to what denomination we're talking about.
Yep.
Like, this is there are times where Catholics were very anti-science. There are times where Catholics were the only people funding scientific discoveries. Go through history, and you will find this is not a black and white issue. And trying to say that, no, you're wrong, it's a black and white issue, is disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
Callan says, we polytheists get off. I mean, I would hope you do. It feels wonderful when you do so.
Yeah. But to the point that Callan is trying to make, it's kind of hard to say that polytheists get off on the accusation of being in conflict with science, because modern polytheists, by and large, to the overwhelming degree, do get off the hook of that, because they tend not to reject science. But what we don't know is how polytheism or polytheistic religions or whatever you would call that, because until you had Christianity, that was just religion generally. We don't know how they would have reacted to a formalized, developing scientific doctrine in its infancy, the way that we know how Catholicism in particular, and to a lesser extent the Protestants, would have reacted to it. Because by the time science as a discipline was emerging, polytheism had been thoroughly quashed by the Christians in the regions where science was emerging. So we don't know what a strong, vibrant polytheism would have had to say about it. My gut instinct is that they wouldn't have had a fucking problem with it, because we saw how philosophy and the natural sciences were progressing in ancient Greece and ancient Rome in polytheistic cultures. But it does feel a little disingenuous to try and claim to know how a quote-unquote Middle Ages polytheism would have reacted had such a thing existed. If that makes sense, Cologne. I derailed thoroughly, and shut up my co-streamers. I'm sorry.
It's perfectly fine.
I mean, that was pretty accurate. I don't take issue with anything in that directly.
That gave me an opportunity to look at Twitter and notice that apparently somebody's YouTube recommendation apparently had anime as a topic, and in that topic it put up Jaden Animations and me. Even though Jaden Animations is a storytime YouTuber and I am a commentator. Neither of us are in the anime sphere. We both talk about anime sometimes, but that's the extent of it. So yeah, that was interesting. YouTube's recommendation feeds are just a perfect.
They're fantastic.
They're fantastic.
Nothing wrong.
Excellent. I think I know that's why I've received like a little bit of extra growth recently. Apparently, YouTube's recommending me as an anime. Also,
even more reason to further develop the subplots of your different versions having romantic entanglements.
Basically, it's lore that isn't even on my channel. It just happens anyway, regardless of my input. Which is why I received a comment earlier today where someone was like, "Sir screams for people to give him fan art," and I'm just like, "But I don't. It quite literally comes without my consent. I do not say bring it or not bring it. It just happens." And I think the only incentive that I give is, "Hey, I'll throw it up on stream," or "Hey, I'll throw it up on."
Do you not realize how tempting that makes it for your average artist?
I realize that might make it tempting, but at the same time, my view is this. If you're going to take the time out of your day to make artwork of my character, I'm going to take the time out of my day to shout you out.
It's a good stance, honestly. Artists deserve more recognition. all the time.
Oh, I feel safe in saying this because I know no one will bother making art about it anyways.
You say that. Do you not understand the rules of my channel? You can accidentally speak things into existence. Continue, though.
If you put in the time and effort to make art of a named dragon, I won't necessarily shout you out, but I will shout at you, at a minimum.
So you're saying that fan art of you is not going to happen?
I already know it's not going to happen because I'm not active enough anymore.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm just going to say that you said it, and I'm sorry for the end results of that. But I guarantee you that because you've said that, it will be undermined. Just letting you know. Also, Spooky Boy Ray sent up another picture. This one I've gone ahead and thrown in. And do you guys, like, I understand that Raziel is in fact taller than me, but like it's by half an inch. It is not by that much. just so you guys know.
God.
I'm not that much smaller.
Aaron's chair noticed what I said. Fuck! I made a mistake!
36, who is my Metamor, by the way. Fan art of an Ain Dragon and Rule 63 Cirrus. Oh, God. Just going to running off with the notebook.
Best investment that my wife ever made for the channel.
The dragon plushie?
Yes.
Whew. All right. Drag, next paragraph's yours.
That is the ad playing, right? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Then you comment about the ad that was playing, which is kind of pathetic to begin with, but even there, you are wrong. Survival of the fittest is not just about the species as a whole, it's certainly about the individual too. You can't even get to a stage of species being in danger of not surviving without passing through the individual. If individuals thrive and prosper, so too does the species. If the individuals fail to reproduce, then the species is threatened. Aside from, I don't find that horribly inaccurate, aside from like the survival of the fittest aspect being brought up, because that is not a term that's usually used in the scientific discussion. That's something coined by social Darwinism.
If memory serves, the ad that played during that was one that tried to link the theory of evolution with like depression. And then it said, well, of course you would be depressed if you actually adhered to the theory of evolution, because if survival of the fittest is the only thing that you believe in, then of course blah, 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 blah. And then my counterpoint was, well, considering that survival of the fittest is a misnomer and it talks about the species, not the individual, then no, that doesn't work. But that said, even taking that into consideration, this might be the closest thing to a valid point the person has said.
Yeah, it's just simply saying that without individuals, you don't have a population. Congrats, that's true. But I still take issue to using survival of the fittest at all as a phrasing when you're talking about things in like a scientific lens, because survival of the fittest was coined by social Darwinist impressions, and social Darwinist impressions very clearly did not actually understand Darwinism. They just paid lip service to it to promote their shitty political ideals.
Some of the earliest social Darwinists had some understanding. Like, I could be misremembering, but Thomas Huxley, who is one of Darwin's biggest
bulldog.
Fanatical defendants, was also something of a proto-social Darwinist. He was starting to apply Darwin's ideas to his understanding of human behavior.
He was also the person who coined the term agnosticism for every person who's told me that I'm wrong on it originating as the middle position. Look up Huxley, please. He is the person that term comes from. Continue.
Sorry, you reminded me of fucking...
If you don't believe Cirrus, just at Steve McRae. He'll go on for a few days about it.
That's not even a mic drop, that's a bottle cap drop.
Congratulations, you can now afford half a hot dog in Fallout.
Dude, this stream has earned me 7 bottle caps so far.
Oh man.
Actually, I think you might be able to buy some Instamash with that, depending on where you're going. I mean, you'll have to eat it dry, otherwise you'll have to get more rads, but I don't know. I think this joke might be going completely over people's heads. I hope not.
If you don't understand Fallout joke, GTFO the stream.
Please don't. I said please do, and then I realized that would be bad.
You know his true feelings.
So, Cirrus, do you want to do the next long paragraph?
Yeah.
How have you been landing all of the long paragraphs, sirs?
If not, I'll take it.
I got it. You then progress.
Oh, hey.
What's up?
Sorry, Wumbo just posted in the Discord a fancy version of my name. Thank you, Wumbo.
Where did they post that? Oh, I see
in
that.
fan.
Well, you know what? It's there. I don't know where I'm going to throw it, but it's there. There we go. Boom. It is now also part of the stream. Yes, here we are. It's not NSFW. I'm keeping my word to the best of my ability. You then progress onto the topic of ultimate meaning and socks. And yet again, you're wrong. Putting on socks is meaningful because there is ultimate meaning in life. How?
I don't think I can furrow my brows enough for this.
I don't understand why ultimate meaning is required as a prerequisite for there to be individualistic meaning.
So
life can be ultimately meaningless, and you can still have individual meaning. This point makes no sense to me.
Also, if there is an ultimate meaning that involves an infinite... If there is an ultimate meaning to life that involves an infinite afterlife to which your life is merely a pathetic prelude, socks can't be meaningful. Socks cannot have meaning unless God said unto thee, Moses, thou shalt wear matching socks, and thou that wearest the unmatching socks, thou shalt be stoneth, putteth to death, and then burn in the fires of hell upon the sixth layer with the pornographer and Fox News.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Neither do I. Without socks being a sin or a pathway to heaven, socks can't have a purpose if there's an afterlife of any consequence, period.
I get what you're getting at. Basically, if it doesn't weigh in on one side or the other of the next life, it doesn't necessarily have meaning. Provided
the next life is infinite.
Well, right. Just like how one of my points I make is that a point that I'll appeal to every single time is that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross was meaningless. And if somebody tries to say that it wasn't, I will go, well, okay. So it's meaningful because he sacrificed his life, right? Okay, but he's still alive, so he didn't sacrifice his life. It's meaningful because of the pain that he endured. Okay, well, he's an infinite being, and the pain he endured was temporary. Therefore, we can nix that off as well. That was not important either. So, where was the meaning derived from again?
Your God sacrificed 3 days out of infinity for me. Next. I mean, come on. Odin sacrificed what? An eye? I might be getting my Norse mythology wrong, so I do apologize to the polytheists who are watching and preparing to lynch me over this.
Odin sacrificed an eye to give people knowledge, I believe. It was pecked out by ravens. Callan and Ocean can help me on that one.
They can happily correct me because I'm aware that I know that a Norse god lost an eye to do something for people. That's more of a sacrifice because he's still missing the fucking eye. That's what the point is.
Yeah, the point is the sacrifice was permanent. The permanent sacrifice is ultimately going to mean more to me than a sacrifice of a few days in the scope of infinity. If I sacrifice 3 days, there are 3 days that I can't get back. If I sacrifice 3 days and I live forever, the fact that I can't get those days back means absolutely nothing.
Womp womp! I'll get them back by next Thursday after next.
Well, yeah, because as soon as you get that, then those 3 days never existed in the first place.
Also, because next Thursday is when the universe begins to exist.
Yeah. So, or at least you behave as if it were. If there were no ultimate meaning in life, there's no proximate meaning in putting on socks. Just because you put on socks, it doesn't mean that there's a meaning to do so. You know what this sounds to me like? This paragraph right here? I'm going to go ahead and say it in a different person's voice and see if you can understand it. Even if you believe there's no God, you act as if you do.
He literally says that, and yeah, he takes a line straight from Jordan Peterson. Like this paragraph, I take so many exceptions to. Oh my gosh. It's basically, like, as we get through it, it's going to become clear that he doesn't like the fact that you just keep asking why, and then eventually it's just personal preference that can be the basis for some of these things. He wants it seemingly to be some other objective type basis, which comes to the issue of, like, well, if God gives it meaning, that doesn't change the fact that it's innately subjective to some extent.
And if God gives it meaning, then that meaning is arbitrary because it was a descriptive meaning, not a prescriptive one.
Yeah, so that's the problem that I take with this. Is it seems to make the argument, or he makes the statement that meaning is self-evident, or like ultimate meaning is something that's needed, and that's a self-evident aspect. But I could live my entire life without the idea that there's an ultimate meaning to it, and in fact, that's how I've been living my life since I was born, and that doesn't bother me, and it doesn't stop all the little things that I take meaning in personally.
I have never needed more meaning in my life than the notion that my acts impact other people, and that it would be really fucking awesome if my actions made other people have more pleasure in their life and avoided causing other people more pain, in no small part because that would, by proxy and by various other methods, produce greater enjoyment in my life, greater pleasure in my life, and less pain in my life. Because fuck it, I'm only around for so long, I want to minimize how many times I'd stub my fucking toe. That matters to me, because if you've ever stubbed a toe, you already know what I'm talking about.
That is one of the worst feelings.
You don't need a God to know that you don't want to stub your toe. And the minute that you know you don't want to stub your toe, you can derive all other meaning you need in life.
Well, you do it so that you're not comfortable. That's not just my response. That's actually their next sentence. But if there's no meaning in your comfort, then there's no meaning in putting on socks either. Well, you can have approximate meaning. You don't need
the meaning
ultimate
is
meaning.
The comfort. It is self-justifying.
It's at this point where every time he says meaning, you need to supplement it with ultimate in the front, because it's clear that that's what he's talking about.
He would ignore an ultimate meaning that wasn't God-given.
Well, he doesn't think that there can be. He lays out later that he doesn't think that there can be without a God-given. So to him, they're the same thing.
And what's with that crap about you having to appeal to some holy book in order to need meaning? What? It is because of the need for meaning that people appeal to their holy books as a solution to the problem. No. If people feel like they need meaning, usually what I find is people feel like they need some meaning or purpose. And they are either going to do one of two things. They're going to look for that purpose to be assigned to them, or they're going to assign that purpose themselves. If you assign the purpose yourself, you don't need the holy book. But if you feel like you need the purpose assigned to you, like you need a God's given plan for you, then yes, you might find yourself appealing to a holy book. But let me go ahead and say, as the pragmatist, that's not fucking useful. It doesn't make it any better or worse. It makes it makes the holy book arbitrary. That's all it does.
Fellow pragmatist.
The amount of bullshit you can cut through just by appealing
No
to pragmatism.
sci-fi mind. No. Bad sci-fi mind. Bad. No.
Your ultimate meaning is to sing the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX theme song.
Bad.
Except Dragworker already did that earlier in the stream, and we almost got onto him for that.
I apologize for nothing.
Look, for the record,
Trevor, no! Don't do it!
For the record, I promised my wife that this was just a prop. You bring that shit up again.
you make him a liar.
I might have lied to my wife if you bring that up again. Don't make me lie to my wife and bring Yu-Gi-Oh into this.
They don't appeal to them to create the problem. That's I'm not going to say that word, argument. The need for meaning is self-evident. But nothing can be self-evident. You need it to be ultimately and arbitrarily assigned as per your previous sentences. If the need for meaning can be self-evident, then the meaning behind my socks can be self-evident. So, no. You're contradicting yourself again. Stop it. If you advocate that any action preferentially in the world, the immediate response is why, to which you will attempt to justify yourself and again gain the response why. Repeat ad nauseum, until you reach either ultimate meaning or your initial attempt to justify yourself and again the response, or you reach your initial preference is shown to be meaningless. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be meaning. The meaning for wanting comfort is self-evident. I want comfort as opposed to harm. Or as opposed to uncomfort. Uncomfort is unpleasant. Unpleasant feels harmful. I ought not do that. Therefore, meaning comes from there. All of your meaning can stem from a want to not do or receive harm.
Also, inane dragon now has fancy text that's in the Discord too from Wumbo.
It begins.
And see, this is what I was talking about, though. This is the part where it's almost hyper reductionist, right? You keep asking why. That's his argument. You keep asking why until you reach something that he concludes is either meaningless because it's just your initial preference, or it somehow has ultimate meaning.
He creates an unassailable position where the conversation can never go anywhere. The conversation stops at the beginning. Because the way that he's created the conundrum, it can only be answered to his favor. Because of the way he created the conundrum.
You know what? I have an undefeatable counter-argument for him.
Cat?
Kitte.
Excellent.
The reason that this doesn't work is because, like, either way, you're reaching a point that is to be self-evident. Because your initial your preferences to yourself are self-evident, typically. I mean, some of them you might be able to reason your way to, but I would argue that some of your more base ones are self-evident. So either way, you're reaching a self-evident end. He thinks the ultimate meaning is somehow a self-evident end, or your initial preferences, which are self-evident. And he just simply asserts that your initial preferences are meaningless. There's no support for the reasoning that your initial preferences cannot be sufficient.
And they might be meaningless to him, but that does not mean they are meaningless to me. This is the same type of rhetoric that we get from people who say that without God as an ultimate moral authority, I have no reason not to murder, I have no reason not to rape, I have no reason not to do insert absolutely horrific thing here. This is the exact same argumentation used. 110%, right. And it's because it is the same argumentation used, I'm not just going to point out that it's fallacious. I'm not just going to point out that it's bad argumentation. I'm not just going to point out that it's problematic. I'm going to point out that it's morally repugnant because of the logical conclusions that you can get from this type of thinking.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that.
Also, Inane, you are no longer holding the cat, therefore, Wumbo deserves their yell.
Did Wumbo just write my name in a fancy script?
Yes.
I don't count that as fan art. Aaron's chair is providing an interesting tautology, but I don't know if a tautology reaches the level of an argument to convince me that I am wrong. But fine. Wumbo, how dare you draw me? How dare you make fan art of the inane dragon? What is wrong with you, Wumbo? Why do you drive me to drink?
Why do you do this, Wumbo?
I have to be replaced by cartoon avatar. of Cousin Ed. Cousin Ed works for too much money.
I'm suddenly reminded of the JonTron fast food episode. Where Grumbo, John needs food, Grumbo. Wombo, Inane needs fan art, Wombo.
Crypto, I don't even pretend to know where my accents come from. They're entirely made up based off of college professors. None of them are consistent, and half the time they vary across at least 5 nationalities by the time I'm done.
So, we get to his next sentence. It's just a logical conclusion that ultimate meaning is necessary. It can be a logical conclusion that ultimate meaning is necessary. However, I would point out that it is not mine, and philosophers disagree on shit all the time, and that's fine. You can be wrong. It's okay. You can ignore ultimate meaning. You can act based solely upon your physical needs and conditioning. But that's not a philosophical basis for anything. Actually, are you
That's where you're wrong, bucko.
Actually, kiddo, I would like to direct you to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is entirely a philosophical and ethical argument in nature. Let's go and do that. Just let's go over to Maslow's hierarchy. Let's go over here. That takes into account more than just your physical needs and conditioning. It takes into account much more than that. Are you okay, Inane?
Yes.
By the by,
God, is this guy stupid?
Oz wants you to know that he is watching and he knows about the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX song.
Oz?
You are evil, Oz. Why would you even say such things?
If there is no
didn't mean to derail.
If there is no ultimate meaning, then you're acting as if there were. If there is no ultimate meaning, then you acting as if there were is delusional. No, it's not. It's actually pragmatic. If there is no ultimate meaning in life, and yet I act as if there is, I can act as if there is based on the pragmatic theory of truth. The pragmatic theory of truth holds that you can hold to things being epistemologically true whether or not they are ontologically so, if it is more useful to hold that position. If it is more useful to you, for instance, if you think that without a god you would go on raping, pillaging, killing, etc., I would rather you hold on to that god belief whether or not I agree with it at all, if that is what you need to not harm others in society. Your personal epistemology says nothing about the ontology.
Just to be clear, that is a pragmatic.
There's multiple pragmatic theories of truth, and none of them agree with one another.
Well, some of them can be coterminous. That is, that one picks up where the other leaves off without necessarily directly contradicting one another. Pragmatism, something a lot of people don't realize is that as obvious as pragmatism sounds as a concept,
it's
pragmatism
not.
is a complex school of philosophy encompassing over 100 years of multiple people fighting with one another to the point of fucking trying to murder each other.
Pragmatic theory began in America with 3 philosophers disagreeing with one another on what pragmatic theory should be.
Yes. The origin of pragmatism is 3 people saying "nuh-uh" to each other and all being right.
Because
in their own unique way.
Yeah.
In ways that actually have had important effects upon everything we take for granted today.
Actually, your processor in your computer, one of the 3 people who originally founded pragmatism, if memory serves, wrote up some of the original sets for how a logical processor should function, which were then used to create what we now use as a computer's, or the simpler versions of the computer's logical processor. That was born of pragmatism.
Yep.
Your computer was born of pragmatism.
Yep.
Philosophy's useful, fuckers.
I really like his line in here. If there is no ultimate meaning, then you acting as if there were is delusional. I don't act as if there's ultimate meaning, and I don't believe that there's ultimate meaning. So neither of those are applicable.
This So just like how atheists accuse theists of being delusional for making up a sky daddy to meet their need of meaning, well, consider this. I'm not going to be the person that says that I don't say that, therefore other atheists don't say that. I know they say that. I made an argument in my arguments against the existence of God video that I made way last year. I made a point that an appeal to theistic delusion, or an appeal to mental illness, which is how I worded it in there, is one that ought not be used by any atheist ever, because it is demonstrably untrue. Until you can find religion in the DSM-5, or DSM-6, whenever we get to there, then please do us a favor and shut up about that. Shut up about theism being a delusion. You're wrong. You are demonstrably wrong. Also, I'd like to rewind back maybe 2 hours ago in our stream, where one of the first things we pointed out that if you want to consider religion or theism a delusion or a mental illness of some kind, then I have to ask you if changing an opinion can change a mental illness, in which case you may have discovered the cure for several mental illnesses, apparently. Except you haven't.
It's just like depression, you know? It's like, oh, hey, just be happy. Oh, shit, I'm cured.
Don't be depressed. You're right. That's what I should have done the whole time. You did it.
You just solved all my problems. Therapists be damned.
It is the same delusion in the face of the same problem, it's just done differently. Unless, of course, there really is a God, in which case the theists are right, and not necessarily delusional, and them being right matters. Well, none of it has to do... Whether something is ontologically true has nothing to do with whether or not you are being delusional. Delusion comes from method. It comes from a method of thought. Has nothing to do with something being ontologically the case. So, by claiming that it is, you are doing nothing to further any type of conversation. The non-nihilistic atheist is, however, either wrong about God or he's right but delusional, and it doesn't matter anyway because nothing matters. The non-nihilistic atheist? The non-nihilistic atheist.
Can we scroll up a little so that sentence is actually on screen for everyone? Because
yes.
I feel I need to conceptualize this sentence better.
The non-nihilistic atheist followed up by nothing matters. But
I mean,
where's the hammer?
I honestly, I'm at a little bit of a loss of words for this.
This is nothing but non sequiturs. That's what this sentence is. It is a bunch of non sequiturs.
I don't have a face cam to slap myself with stuff, so I feel slightly left out here.
This is the beauty of the face cam. Self-abuse. Self-harm is important.
My hammer is now glued to my head.
You should not put epoxy on your hammer immediately prior to smacking yourself with it. This is why I recommend books. People rarely apply epoxy to books. Therefore, you are generally safe in smacking yourself with them.
Hey, Inane. I have some great news. Fan art of you exists now.
I will be back.
You need more? Boom. We're just gonna
this
put
is
it right
what you
there.
drove me to.
I didn't drive you to that. I had no part in that. There we are. It's up on screen for you to see whenever you get back. Boom.
I see it. Nice.
Although, I will say this. That has got to be the tamest way you could have possibly portrayed Cirrus riding a named dragon. I know the history of my Discord. I know how dangerous it is. Well, Inane's got the next part, so we're going to wait for him to get back and do the suffering. Also, we've got 2 paragraphs, and we're at the end of the comment. For those who are tuning in, this was a YouTube comment. This whole thing was a YouTube comment.
by Mr. No No.
This wonderful thesis. Also, the artist behind this one was Spooky Boy Ray. Inane is dead. Inane is
we
very
broke
dead.
him for sure.
I see the green screen moving. I feel like that means that he is walking behind there. Yes, Crypto, this whole thing was a YouTube comment. This entire thing. It was a comment on my Evolutionists Say the Darndest Things video. So, let me go ahead and go up to... Let me go ahead, open you in a new window. Thumbnails for future. It is the video that has this thumbnail, the blue one, not the red one. So yeah, it is a comment on this video from a user named No-No. So if you guys want to argue with No-No, you guys go ahead. This was me doing my response to them. Mainly because they said that it was going to take them so long to deconstruct all the horrible things that I said. And I decided that, hey, you know what? Go ahead, say everything that was wrong with my video. I will gladly take the time to respond to you. And I had a choice. Either respond in the YouTube comment section or do a live dissection here and have fun with some friends. I will always take having fun with some friends as a result. I'll do that as opposed to doing anything else, personally. But that's just me. That's just my take. Sci-Fi Mind says, it's not the dumbest comment I've seen. Well, the thing is that it's not even really a dumb comment. It's actually a very articulate comment. The problem is that this person is speaking out of the back end of the asshole.
It's articulate, but with all of that, knowledge of language, there's lacking in actual substance.
Oh, so I didn't realize Jordan Peterson watched my channel.
Well, it really depends on how you define watching and channel.
It depends on what you mean by nihilist.
There's not enough metaphysical substrate for us to be able to understand this topic.
Inane, welcome back to the metaphysical substrate, my friend. So, Inane, you see that the fan art is in there. That means you've got to yell at Ray.
Ray, I said that I wouldn't necessarily shout you out, but I would yell at you. That fan art is fucking adorable, honestly. So I almost feel bad about shouting at you, so I might just have to shout you out. On the other hand, what the fuck are you doing trying to appeal to my better nature by making something fucking cute? What the hell's wrong with you? What kind of fucking human being would do that to a poor innocent goddamn dragon? Driving a fucking drunk to drink even more just so that they'll yell at you for your own comedic pleasure. What the hell, man? Good God, do you see this? I am pouring a beautiful imported red ale that was aged in rum barrels in your honor. What the fuck, dude? What the genuine fuck?
Also, Inane, I've gone ahead and sent that fan art to you on Twitter. That way you can do with it what you will.
Technically, I am in your Discord, so I already have access to it, and I think my wife already downloaded it.
Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that you were being lazy.
I appreciate it, because I forget that I even have Discord, even though I have a Discord server.
I didn't even know you had a Discord server. This was news to me.
That's because I don't usually popularize it.
You see, for me, I spent some time advertising my Discord, just a little bit, and then just over time, the Discord became part of my channel's canon.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just like I have to mention it because I have to mention things that happen on it for certain videos.
Well, see,
and here we are.
I had a Discord for my channel, and that died an appropriate death, much like my channel practically has. But what I also have is a Discord for my role-playing games, which I run on Alignment Unknown, which was Godless Cranium's channel, but alternate channel, but apparently I might be getting more involved in that, maybe? More to come! Ask Godless Cranium, not me.
Oh, on Alignment Unknown?
Mm-hmm.
That said, if you guys have not gone ahead and looked at Alignment Unknown and seen their D&D sessions, please do so. Whether or not you care about the individual YouTubers involved, Godless Cranium's a good guy, go do it. Meh. That's just my take there.
Watching YouTube personalities play D&D, sign me up.
And you get to see Godless Cranium and I take vengeance on one another, since we play in one another's campaigns, and they're both uploaded to Alignment Unknown. So you have a campaign where Godless Cranium is a player under my rule as God, and you have a game where I have to submit to him as God, which you can imagine with our Type A personalities tends to mean a certain amount of revenge.
Quessa just put in a super chat. The journey towards getting yourself 63 begins, Mr. Dragon. We all know what comes next.
You're doomed.
Steven Zagela also said, is there fan art of Aaron? Yes, there actually is fan art in my Discord of Aaron. Yep. 3 total. 3 pictures total so far from what she just mimed over to me. Are you draining everything? You're sad. Is an Ain Dragon the Dovahkiin? Fusro don't! Speaking of an Ain Dragon and things that have to be spoken in dragon tongue, you do have the next paragraph, and it is your last paragraph.
Oh, thank God for fucking that.
Are you talking about Zeus?
Thank every god. All of them. Even the ones that don't exist, and the rare one that might exist, such as, who's that guy who thinks he's Jesus reincarnated? Lives in, like, Alabama or some shit?
We've got a bunch of those, actually.
That's the holy trailer.
We've got a bunch of those. I actually did a video with Elijah Davalos on one guy that thinks that he's the reincarnation of Jesus. He actually has all the women in his congregation changing their last names to his.
So godly to have an amazing brothel.
15-minute mock. I'm sorry, there was no way to go forward with that except to just fucking break into it. My response is overlong, time-consuming, not exhaustive, and really doesn't even touch upon the heart of the matter, like the heart of the cards. Which
you
is,
hit your camera
why are you going after these guys? They obviously aren't the brightest bulbs, unlike myself. But they're just trying to do a fairly reasonable thing, which is to reassure believers that they're not actually necessarily crazy. The theory of evolution is not complete, not a fact, which is technically correct because the theory of evolution and the fact of evolution are 2 separate things, but both exist. Not evidence against the existence of God. No one argued it was except creationists. And there are actually scientists out there that acknowledge some of this stuff. What stuff? So when your atheist friends try gaslighting you in the future, just tell them some of this. That's not an unreasonable thing to say to people. All of this unreasonable shit I've been bullshitting about bullshitting.
So I'm going to go ahead and say this. If another YouTuber were to do a video response to me saying I was wrong on a topic, that would not be gaslighting. In fact, actually, one of my better friends in the YouTube sphere, Bionic Dance, has done so. Bionic Dance has a video response to me where she vehemently disagreed with my position. And guess what? You know what happened right afterwards? We had a conversation on Facebook, and it was a good time.
Bionic Dance is good people. I don't agree with her on a lot of things, but she's good people.
Exactly. When I got things wrong on my Why Religion Causes Harm video, the one that I believe you mirrored on your channel in Ain Dragon.
I believe so, yes.
Aaron Raw pointed out things that I got wrong in that video. And you know what happened after he pointed those things out? He came onto my show and we had a good time.
I think even on my mirror, my pinned comment is me going, here are some things that Cyrus got wrong that he acknowledged because he's a smart, honest individual. Fucking subscribe to his channel because he's willing to call himself out on his bullshit.
So if somebody tries to make a video saying that I'm wrong on a topic, what's going to happen is I'm going to look at it and either agree, in the case of what happened with Aaron, or I'm going to disagree, like in the case of what happened with Bionic Dance. And you know what's going to happen? 9 times out of 10, we're probably still going to be friends at the end of it. Because whether or not we agree on a topic says nothing about whether or not you're gaslighting me. Just because we disagree Does not mean it's gaslighting. I have had atheist
You know what,
YouTubers
sir?
disagree
You're
with
wrong
me
and
before.
You're gaslighting me right now.
Oh my god, Inane, I am going to throw a razor at you. In fact, I have one in my hand right now for reasons.
How dare you! I shall defend myself with a book!
I don't think you want... This is a fresh razor from Dollar Shave Club. I don't think you want this thrown at you at all. This is very sharp. So you just make it bigger.
This comment, but
Sharper than this comment. But no, point is, when atheist YouTubers go after each other on YouTube, it is because we think that something someone else has said is factually wrong. It does not mean that we hate each other. Now, granted, there are some circumstances where it does in fact mean that. But usually, skeptics fact-checking themselves is part of skepticism. It's okay. It's not fucking gaslighting. It is not abuse. It is fact-checking. And there's nothing wrong with that. And most of us encourage it. So... there.
Just don't slip over the ledge from skepticism into solipsism.
You don't even have to do that.
Fuck solipsism.
You could just go into the argument from the ass. Hyperskepticism.
Mm-hmm.
For those who aren't aware, the argument from the ass for hyperskepticism is a donkey in between two plates of food. The plates are equidistant, about 20 feet apart. The plates have food of exact quality, and because the donkey is a hyperskeptic, they do not know which one they should choose because they seem fundamentally equal. They are stuck in the middle and starve.
Exact same quality and exact same quantity for the pedants out there.
Yes, same quality, equidistant, same quantity. That is what the donkey knows, and it does nothing, and it starves. That is hyperskepticism, is not being able to take a position on anything because you are too skeptical. That is a problem, and that is why the argument from the ass exists, to show why it is a problem.
And ironically, that's the problem that Armored Skeptic claims to have, even though in reality his problem is far stupider.
So, that said, we have one last paragraph to get into, and that is drag workers.
You bring up intelligent design and seem to hand-wave it off as pseudoscience, citing a court ruling of all things. Well, I cited
the Kitson versus Dover trial.
Well, intelligent design actually has more explanatory power than the theory of macroevolution, and has proved to have more predictive power too.
Where?
In the differential prediction, which was subsequently proved true, of the crucial role played by so-called junk DNA. You should look more into that before dismissing it so easily.
What's funny is that when we get into the junk DNA argument, I actually had to look it up and found that a good chunk of the junk DNA that we found actually had very important roles that it held in the human body. And I acknowledged those roles. I acknowledged that was a thing that happened there. So this comment still doesn't make any fucking sense.
My counter-argument is this beer, because that's all he deserves.
Do you think he deserves that beer?
No, he deserves the empty bottle that the beer came in.
Here's what my thoughts on it, right? So you bring up intelligent design and seem to hand-wave it off as pseudoscience. There's a reason you can dismiss intelligent design as pseudoscience.
Because it's been demonstrated to be pseudoscience.
Yeah, the easiest method, too, is anybody who believes in intelligent design, ask them a simple question. What would it take to falsify your position? And that has to be done in a scientific study. Like, it has to be able to be scientifically studied to falsify your position.
Also, one of the things that you can ask is, what predictions has intelligent design made, and can you demonstrate?
Given the definitions within science of the terms, there's a far simpler way to sum all of this up into a single question. What is the evidence for intelligent design? Evidence in a scientific context being, as Aaron Ra has pointed out, facts that can only support one theory.
Look at the trees.
That doesn't support your theory.
ultimately, like, what I focus on is what would be able to falsify it. Because any scientific theory makes very clear claims about what would be able to falsify or adjust said theory. And so, if intelligent design is in fact science and not pseudoscience, you would be able to point to an area of scientific investigation that could conclusively demonstrate intelligent design to be false.
I agree, and I understand drag. However, there are even still legitimate scientists who reject the Popperian notion that falsification is a necessary element of a good scientific theory. So there are people who say that you don't have to have a falsifiable theory for it to be a valid scientific theory. It merely has to be the best theory to explain the evidence, even if it could never be falsified. I reject that position. I think falsification is a necessary element. You have to be able to say what would make your theory wrong, in my opinion. But I understand that that's getting into the philosophy of science rather than science proper.
Right. I'm curious about that position that you just brought up because isn't part of scientific models predictive power, right? And so if you have a model that falsification is not a necessary aspect to, then it lacks in predictive power because falsification is naturally a byproduct of predictions. Like you
and no. Technically, if you make
data.
every possible prediction, you still have quote unquote predictive power. It's weak predictive power, but you have it. This is the difference between abduction and abduction plus falsification. In pure abduction, which is the early scientific approach, philosophically, you have what is the best explanation for the evidence done. And your explanation still has to make predictions because new evidence will eventually arise. And your theory will either be immediately falsified or it'll be able to predict those pieces of new evidence. In abduction plus falsification, which was Popper's contribution in the 1950s or 60s, I forget exactly when, but people seem to forget how recent the notion of falsification was relative to the practice of science. When Darwin proposed his theory of evolution, he didn't give one whit to the idea of being able to falsify his ideas. He just said, here's this evidence, here's my best explanation for it. Done. Hypotheses and theories are not independent Dinobot full. Hypotheses are products of theories. This is a common mistake that a lot of people make. Hypotheses never graduate to a theory. A theory is a model of reality. A hypothesis is a prediction made by a theory. I'm not describing hypotheses because they are all kind of interwoven into theories.
So if you have 10 different hypotheses, then those hypotheses would comport to a theory.
Those hypotheses would comport to one or another or possibly several theories. For example, the Newtonian theory of gravity and the Einsteinian theory of gravity both hypothesize the position of Mars on a given date. And you can test and predict that in both models. And in both models, they'll be correct because in the case of Mars, the orbit of Mars follows both theories. Whereas the hypothesis of the position of Mercury falsifies the simple theory of Newtonian gravity, whereas it confirms the theory of Einsteinian gravity.
This is why when somebody tries to say that, well, I guess Newton was wrong because Einstein, you go, well, no, actually Einstein's theory of relativistic physics encompasses and makes sense when you take into account Newtonian physics works in a smaller local group.
More or less, yeah. Newtonian physics is a special case of Einsteinian physics.
Also, another piece of fan art came in, and this one's weird.
Oh no, I see it. Oh boy.
Inane takes a drink.
I'm almost out of beers in the house.
I have drained your house of beer.
Not of liquor, though. I still have that to fall back on if this keeps up.
That said, we did make it to the end of a YouTube comment, everyone.
One YouTube comment.
This is how long, and
we
granted,
had fun on the way.
we went into a lot of tangents, and we had fun, but this is an example of why sometimes it takes a very long time to unpack bullshit.
Especially such in-depth and detailed nonsense as this guy was throwing around.
So, this was an adventure. I think if I ever get like incredibly long comments like this, oh wait a minute, you know what? I say that, but somebody made a response to him.
Oh, nice.
Pancos the Greys. Given that the materialistic worldview is dependent upon the theory of evolution, well, not really. Maybe we were created in an alien test tube. Perhaps this is a simulation. There are probably many other explanations that don't require evolution or your personal God. It's not a choice between two options, as Christians like to portray it. To which he responded by saying, no, because where did the alien come from?
Oh boy, he's one of these.
I am an advocate for saying that the argument from contingency holding that everything is contingent on God is fine. I am fine accepting that at any point in time for the sake of an argument. Because, for me, if you want to hold that things are contingent on that, fine, I don't care. I don't think the problem of infinity necessarily is an actual problem, so infinite regress, whatever, don't care. As a result of that,
I agree with that.
One of the things.
The fact that I agree with that is why I refuse to accept the argument from contingency.
The thing is, though, is that for me, I will grant an argument from contingency in the course of an argument for the sake of saying, now that we've got everything is contingent on a first cause, if we accept that everything is contingent on a first cause, at what point do we determine what that first cause is?
I can happily grant that notion, but in general, I refuse to grant first cause arguments because they hinge on a misunderstanding of physics.
Yes, because for a layman, infinite regress is a problem. But the only problem,
simply because causes are not causes are themselves causal.
Well, also
causes are a subset.
You also have to consider the fact that an infinite regress is only a problem for conceptualization. You and I cannot conceptualize infinity, therefore it sounds like a problem. But the mere fact that we cannot conceptualize it does not necessarily mean that it doesn't hold.
Yeah, I mean, you could see this clearly in our mathematical systems that we use, like integers. There is an infinite number of integers because as long as you have an integer, you can add one to it, and therefore you have another integer. And we can continue to have integers in that respect. And math is an entirely logical-based system that we have, and it's a system that functions essentially on infinity. So infinity and logic can work together.
They necessarily have to because mathematical logic is a thing.
Right. And that's my whole thing. Is you can't really take a stance. I don't know. I find the idea that people say that infinity or infinite causal chains are absurd. That goes along with my earlier notions of I don't give a damn what you personally find absurd, because we use this and it produces results.
Well, so Inane, how drunk do you feel?
Not that drunk, honestly.
That's good. We didn't kill you today.
It's the sad side effect of being a fat sack.
I'm not drunk at all, but that's because I was drinking tea.
Lemonade.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Gotta. Yep. There we go. Had to just do that for a minute there.
Fair enough.
I think that's the only hot sauce he's drunk, despite claiming he'd be drinking hot sauce the whole stream. I feel gypped.
You feel gypped?
I feel gypped.
The best part about that is that I haven't been drinking hot sauce. I didn't even drink hot sauce there.
I feel more gypped.
You liar. You fraud. Sham.
I'm a liar and a fraud and a sham. Yes.
I've had to
Your
switch
shit bugs.
brands of beer because of you. For the second time,
Here's the
actually.
real thing.
Well, I am sorry that you have had to switch brands so many times, but you know what? That means that I can just imagine Inane Dragon falling on his knees and just crying to the sky, "My brand!"
I mean, as long as it's tasty.
Lick it with your special tongue? Except with that fan art that came up recently, I don't know if I really want to say that.
Good thing. You just spoke something worse into existence.
Damn it.
The 3 beers of tonight's stream. For any alcohol aficionados watching.
They are the beers for consumption here. Sci-Fi
beer
Mind
necessities.
says, go into politics. You've got all the qualifications. Liar, fraud, and sham. 10 out of 10. I'm gonna go run for office now. I'm gonna be the fat American atheist that just tries to run for office and always fails.
You're going to be American atheists all over again?
Ooh. That was a burn.
That's a burn.
Oz says, Cirrus, I'm still here. Do I have to make an arrangement where you do drink hot sauce? No, you don't. Though if you would like to make an arrangement for me to have to make a Carolina Reaper challenge, that would be equally painful. And there happens to be a place that offers the Carolina Reaper challenge within 10 miles of my house.
I personally prefer the option of Oz making you sing the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX theme song.
You prefer that option, do you?
I'm now ready for this.
Yeah.
Well, Inane, he couldn't make me do it on stream. He could not make me do it on stream. Because Oz is a $50 patron, which means he can request one video a month. So it would not be during stream. Yeah. It would have to be me making an entire video of that. Arguably worse.
Definitely worse.
Much worse.
Because in a stream, I can hide it.
Worse for everyone but me.
Because now you can just never click the video.
Exactly. On a stream, I have to do this and hope that I realize when I can put the headphones back on.
Well, the good news, though, is that was... Jeebus, how long have we been on air trying to get through this crap?
Over 2 hours.
Jeez. Kill me, please, slowly. 2 hours and 42 minutes in order
Almost
to get
3
through
hours.
this.
Hot damn.
Congratulations, No. Your comment had that much to unpack. We also decided to have fun at the same time, so you know what? It's okay. We'll have fun at your expense. So,
It was
Inane,
definitely worth it.
what are your final thoughts here?
Drink more beer. It's the only way. It's the only hope.
It's the only hope.
When fuckers like this are popular enough to warrant attention, it's the only hope. And I know this particular fucker may not be that popular, but he gets his talking points from people who have millions of followers.
Fair. So even though he himself isn't necessarily popular, this is all rhetoric that we hear from certain unmentionables.
From people who, even setting aside the unmentionables, who are small fucking potatoes, he gets his talking points from people who have millions of followers, who rake in billions of dollars, who could personally fund the construction of a fucking Ford-class aircraft carrier with their annual take. And it's tax-free, bitches!
Yeah. I bounce back and forth between the issue of whether or not we should tax churches, because there's part of me that goes, if we tax them, then they are at least contributing to the nation, and they ought to. Then there's the other side of me that goes, well, that would give them a lot more power than they already have, and I don't necessarily want that either.
My counterpoint to that second voice of yours that I understand and appreciate is that they get away with it already. At this point, taxing them would just hold them accountable to what they already do.
The other point that I would make, though, when it comes to this, is that the only churches that will actually get hurt by taxation are not the ones you're trying to hurt with it.
Yeah, they're the honest churches.
Well, no, because I'm not sure I'm convinced by that, because the reason they get away with dishonest bookkeeping is because they are not subject to taxation. Because the IRS is already not looking at their books, they get away with cooking them.
I mean, to some extent, but I think what you're going to get into there is just like anytime we add something to the tax code, it's a very brutal process. There's going to be lots of lobbying, and there's going to be loopholes that are created within the tax system. That's just a byproduct of our American tax code.
These are reasons why companies like Amazon can get away with several dollars in profit while also not having to pay that much in taxes.
Well, no, actually, the reason I hate to be the no actually guy here.
Yeah, that's fine.
The reason that Amazon gets away with it is because they take their annual profit and they sink it back into R&D every year.
Well, yes, that's actually a sales loophole that's commonly known. It's the same reason.
You call it a loophole. You call it a loophole, but that's not a loophole because no one is taking home that profit. Because every person who actually takes money out of the company has to report that money as income. The company takes their actual profits and they sink them back into money wasters. They sink them into new Amazon Prime TV shows, some of which are utter failures, or they sink them into research on the new way that Alexa can data mine you, some of which is total waste. It's not as simple as saying, oh, they use a loophole to avoid paying taxes. They actually reinvest their money into the company.
Well, no, I understand they reinvest it. The reason I call it a loophole, it's not to dismiss it. It's because I've read several books on sales and entrepreneurship, and one of the things that it points out is to make a catalog of everything you buy throughout the year so that when it comes time for taxes, you can claim the things that you bought under the pretense that they were bought for your entrepreneur business. For instance, you need to buy a new car. Well, this is a new car for the business. You need to buy, for me, if I needed to buy a new computer tomorrow, I would then take that receipt and use it when my taxes come in. It's not a loophole as a method of dismissing. It's a loophole because I have read and researched this and I agree that that's what you do to not get gouged on your taxes.
See, if you're not getting gouged, if you're doing it to avoid getting gouged, because it's a legitimate business expense, and this might be a personal philosophical point, I wouldn't consider it a loophole. Loopholes are shit you use to avoid paying taxes you legitimately owe.
Fair.
As opposed to ways to compensate for the fact that you invested in Okay, I don't want to sound like the capitalist shill. But there are ways in which companies and even individual proprietorships, etc., help the general wealth and well-being of the country. I.e., if you legitimately invested in paying your workers a fair wage, if you legitimately invested in giving your workers good health care, you are doing shit society should be doing. You are helping society, and you should get credit for that come tax season.
No, and that's fair. That is a fair point.
And so if that's what you're doing, if it's a legitimate business investment, or for that matter, if it legitimately makes the country better, if it actually makes America great again instead of being a Trumpism, then fuck it, you deserve a fucking tax break for that. If you pay your average unskilled wage slave $15 an hour, you deserve a tax credit for that in my book. If you look at the minimum wage and you go, nah, fuck that shit, I'm going to pay my people a living wage, you deserve to take that as a tax expense.
I would agree
because
if
you're
that
doing
could be
the
used.
Government's fucking job when you keep people out of poverty. And that's probably the most libtard shit I've ever said, and I'll get burned for it later.
I mean, would that be considered? I guess that would be considered a liberal point because it is it's pointing out what the government should and shouldn't be doing, as opposed to just acts this part of the government, acts that part of the government. So I guess, yeah, that would be a liberal point.
I would love for private individuals and corporations to do shit they ought to do to improve society. I am not opposed to turning to government to make it happen if necessary.
In that we agree. I am not opposed to... Well, the only thing that I'm opposed to would be violence, but it depends. It really depends on how you define violence, because there are some people that I listen to that define violence in such a broad way that, like, even a peaceful protest is considered violence, which is a strange point to me sometimes. But that said, we have gotten through the entire comment, even though it took for absolute crapping ever. And we managed to get in a little bit of extra discourse on top of that as well, so more stuff for you guys to sink your teeth into and bitch about me in the comment section about, which is fine. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's not the standard edited video, and I know it's incredibly long-winded as a result, but I had fun, and I hope my guests had fun.
And you got to hear 3 people's opinions instead of 1.
True. That's a great deal.
3 instead of 1, as opposed to 3 for the price of 1.